It's like we're back in the studio. Los Angeles, 1997.
That's a good analogy.
Brett Gurewitz behind the controls. This is Brett. I don't need to tell the truth, but I never lie. I don't need to bow to you. You're just passing by. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I come back to you. Get inside my troubled mind with all of your threats. Sometimes I think I was blind. Not before we met. I never wanted to be the one that you depend on for your life. When you cry, it smells like soup. Sound like Shona Knife. Never feel how I said all night. I gotta ride. Each time I said all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all night. You're an evil Ipso girl. I'm a twisted man, tearing through your perfect world. Make you understand. I never wanted to be the one you bitch and moan and come home to. But as long as you look good, I come back to you. And do the things you do, stay all night. I gotta ride. Each time I stay all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all. I would never treat you bad. You deserve the best from me. If you want to keep your place, you better get down on your own. Yeah, Todd wrote this one.
Yeah. You think?
This is not mine. I gotta ride. Each time I stay all night. No, I just might. You make me stay all night. It's just that side of you tonight that makes me stay all night. I'm gonna stay all night. R.I.P. Todd.
Text the round robin your questions, comments, wagers. Give us a reason. Sleeper fantasy play, your best alternative line, whatever you have. Text the round robin 757-354-5517.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, take us that star-spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
This is the Deep End Broadcasting Network.
You are tuned in to the Round Robin with Stephen Murray on Deep End Broadcasting.
Happy Thanksgiving. Good morning. This is the Round Robin on the Deep End Broadcasting Network. I am Stephen Murray, live from our Chicks Beach studios in the lovely Virginia Beach, Virginia, the United States of America. Good morning. This is our fourth year doing our Thanksgiving special. We'll break down the games all morning and a little special treat to start the day with the history of fantasy football. Sounds semi-exciting, right? But it makes it more exciting when the guy who actually formatted fantasy football as we know it and was kind of the ringleader into making it hit its boom in the late 90s, early 2000s, and was covering and doing fantasy football back in the 80s. It makes it more exciting when that man is Dave Dogrande, who is our weekly contributor from the West Coast. Yes, he is, for all intents and purposes, really the inventor of fantasy football. Now, they did it in the 1960s. A couple of writers got together and, scribbled their stats on a piece of paper and kind of kept track of things and tried to achieve points. But the way that we know fantasy football today was kind of brought up by, again, our own Dave Dogrande. So we'll pipe him in first. We'll do a good history of fantasy football. We'll pick all the games with him, and then we'll get Nephew Dave and the Ants Man together, and we'll go through the whole slate of games for today and tomorrow. It looks like we have 4 good ones, and we'll come up with the best possible angles. We'll rotate some tickets up on the screen. I've got some good ones ready to fly already, I think. And just things to note about Thanksgiving football altogether. And we'll get to the history of fantasy football in a minute. But know that from a professional wagerer angle and a professional bettor side of things, that this is now designed by the sports books to take advantage of the public, those that don't play on a regular basis. You almost want to try to go opposite of the media hype if you can, almost from this point forward, really. I've started to see, too, trying to get some props on some of these games. They're holding a lot of numbers off the board, trying to avoid some of the sharp action. So we really need to be cognizant of some of these props and stuff like that, all the way up to kickoff. For example, I like a Ryan Flournoy today for the Cowboys. I saw a number of just 6.5 receiving yards yesterday, but now I can't find that number anywhere up there. So I was looking to even take him and my free play today. I got $100 free boost. Flournoy, just the 6.5 yards to try to achieve things. Sounds like, that's one catch, and you write that ticket home. So big cognizant that we might have some missing lines, and we're really going to have to do some investigating and be on top of things really all up until kickoff. Now, the other thing we need to be aware of is this. And yes, we do get some wacky higher scoring games on Thanksgiving. But what did I just tell you? It is a holiday designed by the sports books really to try to take advantage of the public. So know that these over-unders, for example, are going to be a little bit higher than maybe what they usually would. Maybe a point or 2 or even 3. We have 3 very high over-unders today. And, I don't have to reach too far back in the recent history when I'm kicking myself now about not playing all 4 unders on the games today and the games on Friday. Now, I think, was it as recently as last year? I think we went all 4 games under. If it wasn't last year, it was the year before. And rarely are you going to get all the games going over, all favorites in the over, something like that. Now, I did see a stat which would involve the Chiefs today, in which road favorites are 25-1 on Thanksgiving against the spread. How about that? Not good news if you're a Cowboy fan, although I think the Chiefs are kind of getting inflated at this point anyway. We'll get into all that with the teams today. There's a lot to break down. This is an ever-changing league, And just once you think you have things figured out, they kind of screw with you. They hit the Boggle. Remember Boggle, the dice game in which you had everything there and you're in plain sight. You'd hit Boggle and all the dice would blow up and land in different formation. Basically, that's the way the NFL is at this point. So know that this is a holiday, again, designed to take advantage of the amateur gambler and to try to take all their money on Thanksgiving. So as a professional gambler, we want to try to be on top of things and try to make money, which would mean the opposite of the public for the most part. And I think I do like all the unders. And we're going to hear some cases made for the overs by a lot of people, even on this program. And don't ever get deterred about your gut instinct. At least follow your gut. Don't let me get you off something of your thoughts. If you think you want to go over on a game today and you're dead set on playing the over, do it. I just know we have scenarios where this is maybe the sharp side of things, where the proof is in the pudding in the past, that maybe all 4 unders isn't the worst play in the world. I mean, all these teams are very combustible to score a lot of points. Detroit and Green Bay, you'd love to see the Green Bay sling it down the field. You would love to see the Chiefs open up their offense and get things correct against a perceived bad Dallas defense, but that defense is trending better. And then you get Joe Burrow back, without T. Higgins, but maybe Burrow can come out and throw for 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, and force the Ravens to play a higher scoring game today. So everything is very doable to the over this afternoon in these 3 games. I think tomorrow's a little different. I think we have wind issues, and we're going to look at the weather here in just a second for these 4 games as we do the fresh lines and weather report first thing in the morning. That's what's strived this show actually to make his presence known, was to go ahead and have early morning content, looking at lines, looking at weather, so we can prepare ourselves for a afternoon of football. So whatever you're doing this morning, Thanksgiving wise, cooking the turkey, running to get coffee, have our volume on. Don't worry about the parade. Don't worry about any of the other pre-games. We're here to give you wagering angles all morning. We're going to try to pop home some winners, and we'll rotate some tickets up on the screen as well. So if you're just listening, screenshot some tickets, have a pen and paper nearby to jot some things down. If you're viewing and just hanging out on your couch, then you'll get some tickets coming through, and you can play along with some of the things that we like this afternoon. All right, so I need to get a ticker up here. I need to get my tickets up here. And what we'll do, I recorded Bill Grandy yesterday, so I'm going to play him back here in just a minute after the weather. But we go for a good solid 2 hours. All right, we're going to talk about the history of fantasy football, and then we're going to pick the 4 games, and then we'll get him back over the weekend. So let's look at the weather today and what we have going on. And obviously we're indoors in Detroit, but it's 33 degrees there if you're tailgating outside. Windy as well, 23 degrees. Bundle up if you're there. 60 degrees in Dallas today at AT&T Stadium. No winds, but a nice day for football in Dallas. The Chiefs 3.5, 52. The Lions are -2.5, 48.5 in that game. And then tonight, 36 degrees, 10-mile-per-hour winds. The Ravens now laying 7.5 points, over under 51.5 to the Cincinnati Bengals. Tomorrow, 15-mile-per-hour winds at the Link. Cool day, 41 degrees. So if you're going to the Bears and Philly game on Black Friday, 3 p.m. kickoff, bundle up for that one. All right, so basically all intents and purposes, and if we look at the weather ahead this weekend, it looks like we have a mixed bag of rain and some nice weather, just depending where you are. But it looks like we could have some weather issues at some of these games over the weekend, wind as well. So we'll talk about that. I mean, just not too early to plant the seed, at least a little bit. to start to pay attention to the weather in Pittsburgh, also in Washington, also in Cleveland, also in Nashville. All right. And Indianapolis, you'll be inside, so you won't have to suffer. But potential weather issues for all of those places if you're going to the home games for the Titans, for the Steelers hosting the Bills in a good game there, the Browns hosting the 49ers, and Washington on Sunday night against the Denver Broncos. All right. No real big line movement. Like I said, we have some high over-unders. Time to really consider some unders for the afternoon, considering that these books are probably targeting these numbers a little bit higher than usual anyway. That would be my pro angle advice, at least. Clevy, 2015. I see you on the chat over there. I see a hi and a hello. Why don't you chime in where you are tuning in from? We always love to hear that, as we do get viewers and listeners from around the world here on the Round Robin. All right, I see we got some good viewers and listeners tuning in right now. Let's go ahead and pipe in our man. He is the expert on fantasy football. He is the godfather. He is the founder. He writes for Deadspin. He is a columnist at Field Level Media, a senior analyst at Stack Factor, and the founder of MrFantasy.com himself. I'm talking about the one and only, our man, who is the old school boss of fantasy football, the first ever employee for ESPN to do so, our man, Dave Del Grande. I've been looking forward to this, the history of fantasy football, on this Thanksgiving special with our guy, Dave Del Grande. Maybe a little bit more involved with it than I thought of, and then you guys definitely thought of. We have a legend as far as fantasy football goes in our midst. Let me ask you a question or two before we get to the basic timeline of how fantasy football developed. Obviously, there was the rotisserie baseball leagues, known as the rotisserie baseball, and I played in some of those. And essentially, that is just fantasy baseball. Was there ever rotisserie football before fantasy football? I'm trying.
Well, I guess it depends on how you define rotisserie. I'm not even sure that I would define that word. I mean, it's just right. when fantasy football, when legend has it, it first started up in 1962. I seriously doubt anybody was playing any kind of fantasy sports before that. So I would say, it was called different things, but to say, was there rotisserie football before fantasy football? I don't know. I'm just uncomfortable with that term.
Right. I got you. I was just trying to remember if at some point we were just generally calling it that. And you mentioned it was invented in the 60s. How did it come out? From your knowledge, I mean, you know it all, but what's the exact basis of how it came about?
Well, again, legend has it that in 1962, back then there was the AFL competing against the NFL, and I'm from the San Francisco Bay Area, and the Oakland Raiders were in the AFL. And if you remember the AFL back then, it was basically no defense. It was just a aerial circus every week and tweaking of the rules to make it more entertaining. And so they're putting up some big numbers in the AFL. One of the things about the AFL was that because the teams didn't have a whole lot of money, they paid for the media to travel with them to road games and stay in the team hotel and ride the team bus and what have you. And so many times when, like, the Raiders went back east during those seasons, the schedule was set up so that they wouldn't have to come home. So, the Raiders would go, they'd play the Jets one week, and then they'd stay in New York, and they'd play the Bills the next week, or the Patriots the next week, or some other team. So there was a lot of downtime for the media in between the games, because they were being housed by the team at the team hotel. Anyway, legend has it that one night at the hotel bar, 3 members of the Oakland Tribune sports staff that were there, including the sports editor, had a little friendly debate over who was more productive, not better, more productive. Was it Jim Brown, of course, the NFL star running back, or was it George Blanda, the AFL high-scoring quarterback who was also a kicker? Kind of a silly discussion, but like I said, had nothing better to do on a Tuesday night,
right?
At the hotel bar in New York. And so, anyway, so they created a point system that they thought would help, determine this. And they got other members of their staff, and there was a local bar in Oakland called the King's X, where they kind of hosted these kinds of leagues and discussions. And so they got together, they drafted teams based on these rules, these point systems that they put up, and they created the very first, supposedly, fantasy football league, which wasn't even called fantasy football then. The league was called GOPPL, GOPPL, which stood for the Greater Oakland Pigskin Prognostication League. So it was called Pigskin Prognostication rather than fantasy football at the time. So that's supposedly where it started. I know that when I was hired by another local newspaper in the Oakland area called the Daily Review in 1977, they had been playing fantasy football for many years. And this was in the pre-computer era, so everything was written on hand, by hand. All the stats were done by hand and on manual typewriters and printed out for the rest of the league at the office. And this was 15 years after supposedly the first league was created.
So every year,
that's history.
So every year, some staff members of the Oakland Tribune, which was your paper, would play in this league since they formed it, right?
Well, yeah. I started at the Daily Review, which is one of the Tribune's rivals.
Right.
We took over ownership of the Tribune in 1990. But yes, there was a commissioner in our league, a gentleman by the name of Bill Soliday. He was one of the Raiders beat writers. He covered them for our paper. So this is how he got involved. As you can imagine, he's one of these guys sitting at the bar, not necessarily on the night where this idea was created, but over the next couple of years before the merger, and having to listen to these guys talk about, oh yeah, my team did this, how fantasy football talk is, and my team did that, and blah, blah. And so, Bill, in his mind, decided, you know what, I'm going to talk to the guys in my office and, set up a league like this. And then he became the commissioner on the old steno pads and then when Bill died probably 10 years ago, I assure you there were close to 50 years worth of his handwritten notes and stats that he kept, that should be in a fantasy hall of fame somewhere.
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's kind of fast forward into that current time of when you get involved with fantasy football. So what's your first interaction? How did it even get onto your radar? Obviously it was through the job, but tell me kind of the moment, maybe how that happens.
Well, in 1977, when I started at the newspaper, I walked into a situation where they were playing fantasy football and fantasy baseball. And And so, I'm a big sports guy. I mean, obviously, most people in the sports department are, right. I wanted in immediately on these leagues, and I got involved and have been playing ever since.
Okay. And then,
at the time, I was in college at the time. Nobody had ever heard of this. I mean, I wasn't in a fraternity, but a lot of my friends were in a fraternity. You would think that a fraternity would be a place, all guys, jocks, let's do this fantasy sports thing. But it was, not even on the radar there. It wasn't, we spent a lot of time after work each night where we got off at 12:30 in the morning, closing down bars, and nobody was talking about it there. It was just basically something that was in our newspaper office and at the Tribune's newspaper office, and I don't know, how many others, probably not a whole lot, because it was nowhere. It was nowhere at my college, at the bars, wherever you would think, wherever the men's club, would be meeting and talking about stuff like this. It just didn't exist. So, when I got involved in 77, it was a lot of fun. It was, I really enjoyed looking forward to it every week. I wasn't a big baseball fan. I don't think the baseball game is nearly as fun as the football game, but, I played in both, and that's where my involvement got started.
Did you win a championship in the early 80s or anything like that?
Well, I don't remember that. I do remember, the rules of the game have changed. And, something that I always warn people about who are getting into fantasy football at whatever level is understand the rules of your league, because they're almost all of them are different. I mean, when you play on ESPN and they have a standard set of rules, well, then, you abide by those rules. But, you go over to Yahoo or to Fox or, DraftKings, whatever league you get involved in, their rules are different. And then originally the rules were a quarterback's passing touchdowns counted, in our league, which was simply called points. Okay. In our league, the quarterback got 6 points for a passing touchdown, which was the equal amount to a running back scoring a touchdown or a receiver catching a touchdown pass. And so the quarterbacks were the most valuable guys in the league. And then, receivers were getting and running backs were getting a single point for every reception, kind of standard with today. But the rules, became tweaked, and people didn't like the fact that the quarterback every year in the draft, kind of the Tiger Woods principle, that if there was a really good quarterback, let's say Dan Marino, who was throwing 10 more touchdown passes than anybody in the league, and you had the first pick and you took him, well, immediately your team became the best team. And so people, decided that, we need to water that down. We need to make the league more fair. And so they dropped it down to 4 points per touchdown, eventually to 3 points per touchdown, like most leagues have it today. I'm not sure I agree with that decision that was made, but the point is that these rules were being tweaked, and what I always tried to do was stay a step ahead of the others in terms of who's this rule change going to help the most. I think from the leagues that I was in, I was the first guy to recognize that tight ends were useless. They weren't scoring a lot of touchdowns. They certainly weren't catching a lot of passes. They were blocking a lot in the old days. But when Antonio Gates and Kellen Winslow, that type of player came around, I think I was probably the first guy in my leagues to recognize these guys are going to put tight ends on the map. And it was almost like the quarterback thing. It's like, if Antonio Gates is scoring twice as many points as any other tight end, well, then it doesn't really matter how many points he's scoring compared to the rest of the positions. It's just if you have him, you have a huge advantage at that position over what anybody else has. And so it gave your team, maybe you didn't draft one of the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks and they were outscoring the other guys by a whole lot. But you know what? I could make up that difference by having the best tight end. And so it was, that kind of logic that came into play. And I think that's what I remember most about playing in those days was I loved to draft, the Marshall Faulk type running back, that caught a lot of passes. I was the first guy, to draft tight ends, almost every year in my league. And so I don't know that it necessarily resulted in championships. A long time ago, I'm sure I won a couple, but I'm sure that maybe no more than anybody else. Yeah, I don't think I became a quote unquote fantasy football expert because I won a lot of championships. I became because, I have a lot of experience.
Okay, now let's talk about how we got into this big boom nationally. Now everybody plays. And it all started with your boss asking you to write a fantasy column, correct?
That's correct, yeah. In 1990, we took over operation of the Tribune, which was having financial problems. And the Tribune was, a big-time newspaper back in its heyday, but it had lost a lot of its stature by this point. We not only, our ownership took over operation of the Tribune and decided at that point that we were going to we wanted to raise the Tribune's level back up to where it was. So we were going to be big time, big time newspaper. We were going to cover all the major events, sports and news and what have you. So we brought in this executive editor from Florida. His name was Dave Bergen. And, in the newspaper business, the executive editor has way more important things to do than to deal with the sports department. And so you rarely see, the guy or the woman, at that level. But this guy, Dave Bergen, was a sports guy. And so one of his first days there, a bunch of us were just sitting around the office in the afternoon, waiting for the local high school games to start or whatever else we were doing. And he came over and introduced himself to us and said, one of the first things he said was, "Hey, are you guys talking about your fantasy baseball league?" And then I thought, oh, great. He's going to silence us. Doesn't want to be disturbed, with our talk of fantasy baseball. But no, it was the opposite. He was like, "Oh, I played in this fantasy golf league in Florida, and I'd love to join your leagues. What else do you do?" And then, "Well, we do football too." "Oh man, count me into your football league when you start that up." This was great. And so then a couple of days later, we had a sports department meeting with him. And at that meeting, he said, we're going to be bold. We're going to cover all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to start up a fantasy sports column in the paper once a week for the 52 weeks, and we're going to be the first paper in the country to devote newspaper space in a daily newspaper to fantasy sports. And we all kind of looked at each other like, is this guy nuts or what? It was the interest in fantasy sports at that point was so low that it could not be something that you would project would help sell newspapers at all. But this guy was convinced. And so then he looked around and he looked at me and he said, "You're going to be the one who writes it." And I said to him, well, no. I'm covering the Warriors. I'm the Warriors beat writer. I don't have time to do this. He goes, I'm telling you, it's going to be you. And he could have picked any of the other, 10 other guys who were all involved in these leagues and were equally knowledgeable about sports. And I said, what? Why don't we just rotate it? We all know, fantasy. Why don't we just have somebody else, somebody different do it every week? And he was like, all of a sudden he turned really stern and was like, I'm telling you, I'm the boss and you're doing it. And okay, and so I started writing this column, and and he was very much, every column, there was one article every week in our newspaper that had to get the executive editor's permission before it went to print, and that was the fantasy football or fantasy sports column. And so I sent it to him. He looked it over. He made some corrections or whatever you would call it. He sent it back. His edits, I guess you would call it in the newspaper business, right?
Right.
And they sent it back to me, and I'd fix it up, and then we get published. And so that's that really, I would say, if you were looking for, kind of the very first indication or happening that helped create fantasy football, the fantasy football craze. This was it, because it now introduced fantasy. Not only to our entire readership, but within a year, Mr. Bergen decided we're going to get this syndicated so that other newspapers, can run it. And of course, we would always say courtesy of the Oakland Tribune on it. And so we did that. And I don't know, 15, 20 different newspapers from across the country, some big ones, bought it from us. And I didn't have to do any additional work. I just wrote the column just like I did for the Tribune. And then they just took it and they sold it to, as part of this syndication. That was, on Universal Press, which was the biggest syndicator at the time, maybe still is, was the one who agreed to do this. So this was big time. It got into papers nationwide, kind of introduced the sport, or the game, to people across the country. And then every year, Mr. Bergen would come back to me and say, okay, you know what? We're going to take the next step this year. This year, we're going to get you on the radio. No. What do you mean get me on the radio? I'm not a radio guy. I'm a newspaper guy. And he says, he's like, every time I said, gee, I don't think so, he said, I'm telling you, we're doing it. And so he got me every Thursday night during the football season. I would drive into San Francisco from 7 to 8 o'clock on KNBR in San Francisco, which is the flagship station of the Giants and the Warriors. Big time radio station. And somehow, some way, he squeezed an hour of their time out of them. But then it became pretty clear why it was a good idea on their end, because, oh my goodness, the phone lines lit up like it was a Christmas tree every week. It was unbelievable.
Was that shocking for them at that moment in
Excuse
time?
me?
Was that shocking for them when they
Oh,
kind of
absolutely.
realized? Yeah.
Because, you hear this all the time on the radio. If you listen to enough sports talk, how many times each day do they say, "Oh, our lines are,
Open.
are
I have 4
lighting
lines
up.
open. Yeah.
Oh man, if you may have, you may not get through unless you call us in the next 5 minutes. In general, bunch of baloney. And when I would come in at 7 o'clock, the prime time, the drive time show, the most important show on the radio, was just ending. And these were the two of the biggest names in and certainly in Bay Area talk show business, we're just finishing their show. On my drive in, I heard them say, "Ooh, we've got a line open. Call us now at 415, KNBR." And then I would get there and I'd look at their phone lines. They're like, there's not a single line lit, and they had 10 phone lines. And then, at 1 minute to 7, the host of the previous show would say, "Okay, coming up next, the Fantasy Football Hour." And I wasn't the host of the show. They had a professional. In fact, Ted Robinson, a very famous sports broadcaster who does the Olympics, who does Wimbledon. He would happen to be a Bay Area guy. He would fill in on the 7 to 10 show, during the week. There were times when he, and Ted Robinson will, with his guest host, Dave Del Grande, will talk fantasy football. And I'm telling you, they hadn't finished the sentence when the first line lit up. And within a minute, all 10 lines were lit up, to the point where these two guys who had hosted the previous show would look at each other like, what in the world is happening? We can't get a call on our show, and we put this stupid little fantasy thing that nobody cares about on, and everybody in the world is calling. Well, it was, I don't mean to say that it was the most popular show on the radio, but it catered well to soliciting phone calls, because, everybody in fantasy every week, heck, right now I'm thinking about my lineup for this upcoming week. Kind of wish there was somebody out there I could run some ideas, through. And this is what that offered, to people who were just kind of starting up in fantasy football and didn't, oh man, I joined this league at my office. I don't even know, who these guys are. I got a quarterback I got a name of a state. I can't even think of his name. Missouri? No. Montana. That's it. And I got another quarterback by the name of whatever. I'd be like, the last thing I wanted to say was, "You got to be kidding me," right? But that's kind of the level of what it was, because there were people in a lot of offices at that point, who were interested in starting leagues, and they and 4 or 5 of their friends were really into it, but they needed 4 or 5 other people.
Yeah.
And so they recruited the people sitting next to them and the girlfriends of their friends and what have you. And this show was perfect for those people. And these calls just came in, right and left. I mean, I was sweating by the end of the show. It was just nonstop, rapid fire questions. This is radio. You can't have dead time. There's no time to think. You just gotta, whatever first instinct comes to your head, you give the answer. Like I said, I wasn't a radio professional, and so that took it to the next level. And then, then I was the first one to, again, because my boss, knew these things. He said, you should get a website. And what's that? You should start putting some of this stuff on the website, which I did. And then, MrFantasy.com became the first fantasy website in the mid 1990s. So every year it took one more step up to finally the last step was when the boss said, "All right, this year we're going to do a fantasy football magazine." And there were no magazines, zero.
Right.
Fantasy football magazines at the time. And I said, no, we can't do a fantasy football magazine. Fully expecting him to say, "I'm telling you, we're doing it." And in which case we would have done it. And he, at that point, for the first time ever, he said, I don't got time to do
Yeah,
anything.
maybe it's too much, right?
You know, and so, yeah, oh my God. And what a mistake. What a mistake on our part. Imagine having been the first fantasy football magazine out there, crying out loud. I wouldn't have time to talk to you. I'd be so important.
Right. Yeah. You'd be using that as firewood, burning old magazines.
So that was the developmental era. Small time developments, but incrementally it went from, I don't know, I would say before 1990, if there were 1,000 people playing fantasy football, I'd be surprised. But then, through this promotion, the newspaper articles, the radio, station that, you can hear all throughout Northern California and a bunch of, Western states. I mean, and then the website, through this, my website, the first year that I had the website, we had 650,000 views a week. Now that doesn't mean 650,000 different people. That just means 650 times people clicked on to something, but to me, there was an indication that, okay, we just went from 1,000 people playing fantasy football to maybe now 50,000, which is, in the grand scheme of things, still, very small potato, but it was on the map. And then ESPN got involved.
Yeah. So when Scotland was rising up against England, they had 10,000 people. That didn't look too good, but then they got 60,000, and they're like, "Wow, this is an army now." So ESPN, they get involved. How do they kind of decide to latch on? Is it through the UPI newspaper articles? Is it through the regional with the radio? Someone somewhere just tuned in and said, "Oh, this is pretty cool. We need to put our hands into this." How did they get involved with you right off the bat?
Well, I just think that it became more and more of something that, that people were talking about, that is similar to our office, where, you're in a sports, whether it's ESPN or whether you're at the Oakland Tribune, it's basically the same thing. I mean, you have your busy times when you're on deadline, when you got a show or what have you, and you have your down times when you're sitting there twiddling your thumbs and what are we going to talk about? And those conversations in sports environments at this time became more and more involved with fantasy. Hey, tell me about your fantasy league. Oh man, I'm thinking about joining one of those. And as conversations like that, continued at the office, it trickled up the ladder to finally someone of importance, decided if everybody here is talking about fantasy football and we're the sports leader, why aren't we doing, can we make money off of this somehow? And at the time, the biggest negative about fantasy was that the NFL didn't like it. And the reason the NFL didn't like it was because they thought it was bad for regional fandom. In other words, everybody in Oakland was a Raider fan, and everybody in San Francisco was a 49er fan. And when their games came on TV, that's the game you watch. That's where all the ratings were. That's where the NFL was making their money. And so that when fantasy came along, you weren't drafting, you were no longer just rooting for your local team. You were rooting for the team that you had drafted. And it could be Dolphins, it could be Jets, it could be Browns, it could be, Colts, whatever it was. And oftentimes these teams were playing your local team. So now, the NFL thought this is hurting local viewership because there are fewer Raider fans now because of the stupid fantasy football thing that's diluting the interest. Well, they weren't smart enough or whatever to think, no, it's the same number of fans. In fact, it's an ever-growing number of fans thanks to the popularity in fantasy. It's just they're watching different games. It's like, and so instead of 100,000 people watching a 49er game on a Sunday afternoon, maybe only 60,000 people watch that game. But you know what? 50,000 are now watching the game you got on in the morning. And this new thing, this Monday Night Football thing, there's 200,000 people watching that game, regardless of where you're from. I mean, it was a part of growing the sport. And the NFL, and they were worried that this was a gambling thing. Is there money involved? But sure, these leagues, even the league that I was in, but he put in $50. And at the end of the year, you end up winning $350 or whatever it is. And so they were afraid, gambling. No, we don't want to get involved in that. Well, ESPN in 1996 decided, you know what? Screw the NFL. We're going to do this. We're going to be the first major site or company or whatever you want to call it to throw our hat into the fantasy football ring. And they created, their fantasy football product. And when they did, at the time, my name had to be the most popular name of people involved in fantasy. And so I don't know if I was the first guy they called, but I certainly was one of the first guys they called. And they said, hey, I know you do this local, your article in the newspaper or what. We're wondering if you would contribute one column a week, to our fantasy football product. I said, wow, sure I will. And so when funny story there was, again, it's a sign of the times. But in 1996, I didn't own a computer. I barely knew how to, I certainly didn't know how to, didn't have a login or what. And so what ESPN and I decided was the column that I was going to write was going to be similar to the radio show. In other words, I was going to solicit questions from the readers and then answer the 7 to 10 most prominent ones that would be of the most interest to the greatest cross section of readership. And so ESPN created this. They gave me an email address that Dave@ESPN.com, right? Dave@ESPN.com, and what that did was that's where the people would send their questions, and then it would automatically forward it to my email address, which I didn't have, right? And so I asked my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, I said, hey, I need an email address. And she goes, okay, I know how to do that. There's this thing, AOL, I get you an email address for free. I said, wow, that's good. What do we do? You have to come up with a name, and I said, okay, well, I said, I have this little publication that I put out at the office that's called DG, like my name, Inc. And I said, let's just call it DG Inc. She said, okay, I'll sign you up, DGInc@AOL.com. And so she signs me up, right? And so I go to the computer. I said, well, how do you do this now? She goes, just type in www.AOL, AOL.com. It'll ask you for your, whatever. And so I do, and I said, it's not working. You know what I mean? It's not working. I said, tell me it's not working. And I said, you moron. you're putting in the wrong address. And I said, what do you mean? At dginc@aol.com. She says, no, you're spelling it wrong. You're spelling it with a DGINK, whereas, it's DGINC. You told me DG Inc. I said, oh, for crying out loud. It's supposed to be with a K, And she said, well, too late now. So it became DGINC@aol.com. And so I called it up. Hey, there it is. Oh, look, I got my first email. It was a welcome to ESPN, right? So anyway, like within the next day or two, ESPN's, product launches. And there was hey, welcome to this new thing we're doing, fantasy football. And here's Dave. Let's introduce Dave Del Grande. He's going to be writing this column, and I introduced what the concept was going to be. And hey, started emailing me questions to Dave@ESPN.com, and I'll answer them, and we'll get a column out of it every week. It'll be great. And so it was like on at the start of the football season, 1996 season. On like a Thursday night, or Thursday, whatever it was, they launched this thing, and so I go to bed that night, and I can't wait till the next morning when I'm going to wake up. Like it's gonna be like Christmas. I wonder if anybody is going to email me a question. And so I get up in the morning, and I log on, and oh my God, there's 2,000 emails. And so I call my girlfriend and say, hey, you're not going to believe this. There's, I got 2,000 emails overnight. And so I called up the very first one, and it was, something stupid like, hey, I have, Marshall Falk and Chuck Muncie as my running backs. Which one should I play this week? I could only play one. So I type them up a little response and send it out. Oh, this is going to be great, because now after I send it out and delete the original email, it's going to say I've got 1,999 left, right? And so I send it out and refresh. It still says I got 2,000 emails. There's something wrong here. So again, I called my girlfriend and I said, "Hey, what is this? What, this can't. I just got rid of one of these. How come it's not saying 1999?" And she goes, "Oh my God, who introduced me to you, you moron?" The AOL has a maximum storage of 2,000 emails. She says, you're not just getting 2,000 emails. You don't know how many people, have tried to email you and have gotten the sorry, we can't accept anymore. Right. The storage is full. And I thought, oh my God, you got to be kidding. Because my original thought was, I was just going to sit there every morning before work and just, try to respond to 100 emails each day to try to keep up. But this was telling me, who knows? It could have been 5,000, 10,000. Who knows how many people were trying to email me? There's no way I could keep up with this. But anyway, so that was the very first day of ESPN, and the impact that it had, obviously, throughout the country. I mean, it wouldn't be fair to say that fantasy football was born on that day in 1996. But I'll tell you what, it had, graduation or confirmation or whatever you want to say. It was the single biggest day in fantasy football history.
And then when you see all these other big sports conglomerates, they see what it does for ESPN, then it's time for them to hop on board. Talking about like Yahoo, CBS Sports, and everyone else who basically hosted the fantasy, some sort of fantasy football league software after that. So that's the boom right there from ESPN.
And that was the thing, is that even though ESPN was having, such success, it took a while for others to jump on board. And again, and it took even the NFL took them a while to warm up until they saw, wow, this is, our ratings are higher than ever. Maybe we were wrong about this fantasy football thing. And another a funny story was so I've got this website, MrFantasy.com, and I don't know anything about the internet. Buddy of mine from college was a internet consultant at the time, and he started up the MrFantasy.com, created the name, or the address, or whatever it's called, the URL or whatever it's called, and then he said, you need to hire a web designer, because what you got there is ugly. He said, and I don't do that, but I have a friend who does that. And so he hooked me up with this other guy, and I couldn't pay him anything. I mean, we weren't making any money. And so we kind of agreed to do this thing together, and then eventually try to sell ads for it. How do you make your money on the internet, right? So, we did that. We weren't making hardly any money. So we hired an outside guy to sell ads for us, and he was terrible. Except 10 days before the start of the season, I'm not sure what year it was. Anyway, Sporting News decides they're going to get into fantasy football, and so they had an advertisement or something that this guy we hired found that said, if for every person who signs in and gets our free season fantasy football guide that they had put together, for every person who signs in and gets this, requests this, we'll send your company $4. And so within the 10 days, and remember, we're a company who had probably made, I don't know, $3,000 to $4,000 total dollars over the first 2 years that we tried to sell ads. Within 10 days, we had gotten 2,000 or so people to request Sporting News's season preview, and we ended up making $7,800, within 10 days. I mean, it was like triple the total from the first two seasons. And this was the one we thought, oh man, this guy we hired, he's a genius. The first time we actually got money, but this is like the only thing he ever did for us. And it was just complete blind luck. But again, my point is that, as these, the different sites and different companies and different newspapers and periodicals started to get involved, they were trying to get their, foothold into the fantasy game. So they had to try different things, because now they were competing against ESPN. And as we see now, ESPN has basically cornered the market on fantasy football. I mean, yeah, you can go play on different sites and what have you. But, I got to believe that 100 times more people play at ESPN than at any other site. So trying to compete with them was never a real successful thing. But, it didn't stop people from trying. And, and now 30 years later or whatever it is, you see the number of companies that are still involved. You see weekly. I mean, obviously now everything's changed because everything's on the internet, right? But you go on the internet, how many different columns or advice pieces can you find? How many people are publishing weekly rankings or trade,
This
injury
show.
updates.
Right.
Look at that. Just look at injury updates. And for as much as people would say, well, that's, gambling oriented, I assure you that 1,000 times more people are looking at those injury updates for fantasy purpose than are looking at it for gambling purposes. So it's just spawned a whole, variety of different, money-making things on the internet, and all of which have, made me ancient history.
I don't think I ever did it, but I seem to recall, I'm not sure if it was the Sporting News or USA Today, or maybe even the USA Today Sports Weekly paper that they had, but I could have sworn they had some sort of like fantasy roster deal where you like checked the boxes with your pen, maybe even sent in a few bucks, and then you tried to like win some sort of a prize pool. Am I remembering that right?
Well, a lot of people did that. I think our newspaper actually did that.
Right.
A lot of these concepts. It was just one of those things where, especially early on, that was just mushrooming. Every year I'm sure there are more and more people playing fantasy, but when you go from 10 million to 11 million people playing, well, yeah, that's an extra million people playing, but it doesn't sound as good as originally when you went from 1,000 people playing to all of a sudden, overnight, in 1996, it went to it had to be over 1 million people. And it was just, sold like hotcakes. And everybody wanted a piece of it. So they, newspapers, like I said, like ours, published these competitions. Simple, it led to, other creative thinking, like, all right, we're going to publish, the 16 games in the NFL this week, and you pick the 16 winners, and at the end of the week, we'll give you a gift certificate to Al's Sporting Goods down the street.
Right.
And so, and we see that now today with all the props and everything. There's so many people. Fantasy sports has created such a diversity of interest in football that people want to be involved, and whether I don't want to play in a fantasy league, these guys are too good, or I don't want to do something every week. I just want to do something once, when my team's playing on Sunday, I want to be able to, enter a prop competition or whatever it is. And there's just so many more of these people getting involved every day and every season. And I don't know, I'm not convinced we've seen the ceiling yet.
Right. In fact, you even have guys who you talked about the various media shows and all that, but you have guys who have like specific traits within like fantasy and like props and stuff that they're specific to their own little tiny niche within all of that now. So it's almost kind of like completely spider-webbed.
Well, no doubt. You see, there are fantasy, just look at ESPN. They have that, I'm the injury expert, and, I'm the, my specialty is in projecting whatever, defensive leader. It's almost like they've created their own football team that has, that has a boss and then like 20 assistant coaches that are all specialized in one area because the more serious you are about fantasy, the more you're going to be seeking. I mean, again, just this morning, I had to know, well, is Jacobs playing this week? Is Irving coming back this week? What's the story with Burrow? Oh, what's going on with Mayfield? I mean, et cetera, et cetera. And so, you're searching for, and not only what, are they playing? Are they not playing? Are they practicing? What's the extent of their injury? But then you take it to the next level that, okay, well, this guy's out. What does that mean for, what the team is going to do? What's the fantasy impact of Marvin Harrison's injury? And so there is just, to think that back in my day, which granted was a long time ago, there was one source of fantasy information. And to, if only, I had been able to somehow, some way, capitalize on that.
Right.
Something like,
Right.
The Pete Rozelle of fantasy football. It just wasn't a big money maker early on.
Right.
I had another job. I had a full-time job. It wasn't like, I could just drop everything and put together a fantasy football mag.
You should be docking the yacht between Jerry Jones and Donald Trump, to be honest.
Oh boy, wouldn't that be fun?
I heard someone, we'll start to transition this into the current stuff now, and the games that we have on tap. But I heard someone say something interesting. I don't know if someone keeps track of this. I haven't heard this stat when you're talking about all these and all the specifics. But I think someone should start keeping track of points left on the field, which would be points that you don't get if you would have taken the field goal instead of going for it on 4th and 3, 4th and 4, or whatever. I think we might be surprised if we add up all those tallies at the end of the day of teams that, don't get the first down. So you don't get, you're a -3 because you didn't get the field goal. Get the gist of what I'm saying on all that?
Yes. And that's, the analytics, one of the problems I have with analytics is that it in order to be something that the average football fan can understand, it has to be watered down to the point where, similar to what you were talking about there, analytics says we should go for it on 4th and 2. Okay, well, that's fine because you have a very simple stat that shows that on 4th and 2 in this season or in the history of football, whatever you want to use as your period of time, that teams that go for it on 4th and 2 make it 55% of the time. So analytics says you should go for it, right? Well, what it doesn't tell you is that, okay, these teams that went for it on 4th and 2 and they made it, then what happened? Because making it on 4th and 2 doesn't get you anywhere.
Right.
Unless you finish off the drive. And so already 45% of the teams didn't make it, right? So this other 55%, what happened? Well, 30% ended up not scoring, and 30% ended up kicking a field goal, and 30% ended up getting a touchdown. All right, so what you're telling me here is that, 1/3 of this 55%, which is 18% of these teams who didn't kick the field goal, right? They wound up scoring a touchdown, which is the reason they didn't kick the field goal in the first place. So well, you say analytics is telling you should go for it. 18% touchdown success rate is telling me it's a terrible idea not to kick the field goal here. And so, yeah, I mean, and so it's, like I said, I'm sure there are people out there, certainly way more capable than me, of calculating these things, but it becomes very complicated.
Right.
And to the point where, this column here that studies whether you should go for it on fourth down is designed for, mathematicians only. Because, the rest of you who are going to try to read this are not going to understand. And that's why, you see there was even a play in the Monday night game. Once Carolina had the ball, I think they were in their own territory. And it was fourth and 3 or 4th and 4. I mean, it wasn't even like a 4th and 1, where one of the broadcasters says, well, analytics says you should go for it. It's like, the analytics guy's an idiot.
Right.
Because the odds of going for it and resulting in, a score are, I mean, like I said, one thing going for it and making it. Second, it's the important thing is, going for it and getting a score out of it. And I'm not sure that, the analytics that you're citing is agreeing that going for it here and getting a score out of it is a high percentage. So, it's just, I don't know. These numbers are numbing. And again, it reminds me of the very first radio show that I had when the calls coming in were, a lot of them were just so simple and, no brainers, but you needed, you just pointed out that the level of people who are playing this game, and obviously it's increased from then to now, but the level of people playing this game is the average intelligence in terms of fantasy football is so low that don't laugh at these people. You want to encourage them to keep playing, but at the same time, give a response that sounds like it's a serious response. Yeah, I suggest you play Montana over Spurrier this week, rather than you idiot. Everybody in the world knows you should play Montana. Nope, don't say that. You dumb it down to where you make the person sound important and you're providing the information that they want. And that's kind of, to me, what, in some ways, what analytics has become is that, well, in order to get people to really understand, we really need to dumb this down. And we're not giving the answer that we really believe is the right answer, but in fact, we're giving the answer that would be simplest to understand. So that,
you've seen,
I try to keep things simple in my own mind.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I think obviously, but you remember the great comedy movie of our era, Airplane, correct?
Yes.
And there's the part of Airplane where they were talking about their chances of survival. And they said, well, we have a 1 in 8 chance of survival, but there's only a 50-50 chance of that. I always thought that was very funny. But that simply applies to everything that we've been talking about. Let's get back to that Carolina-San Fran game. That's kind of on my short list of topics before we talk about the games. One, and we know this, but Bryce Young is just so short. He is so small. Even when he has success, he's automatically going to have games of no success just from his height alone. I'm convinced of that. So that's one. And then two, how alarming were the 3 Purdy interceptions to everyone out there in San Francisco Nation? I mean, he's coming off the injury. You give him a pass. I forget what it is in the games that he's played this season, but it seems like 1 million interceptions now. At some point, people are going to get sick of that?
Well, I think that, regarding the interceptions, I mean, to me, the alarming part is the fact that we're just not used to seeing the 49ers quarterback throw the ball into a crowd. And that's generally because the crowd doesn't exist. I mean, they've had a level of receivers, and even recent years, that get so wide open that the quarterback, sees them and throws his ball, and even if it's behind the guy or over his head or what, there's no other defender in the area, to intercept it or to take advantage of it. And they just don't have that level of receiver anymore. I mean, how do you, which is not surprising. I mean, how do you go from Debo and Ayuk, two elite level receivers in that type of system, to Jawan Jennings and God knows who else they were throwing out there. And so, it's got to be frustrating on the quarterback's part that you're used to, stepping back, taking, looking downfield. Okay, there goes Ayuk down the middle of the field. I know Debo's going to break wide open over the middle, and just floating the ball out there to him, and he catches it and moves on, to the point where now that's just not happening. And so you either got to take more chances. And as the broadcasters mentioned in this game, Purdy is a guy who likes to throw the ball down the field. And well, now when he does that, he's putting the ball way more at risk than he has, in recent years. And so I'm less concerned about Purdy than I am about what are these guys going to do for receivers moving forward, especially now that it sounds like that Ayuk isn't coming back next year. And we've had this conversation before, and I think the 49ers, will head in this direction, or would be wise to head in this direction, is that these wide receivers are dime a dozen these days. And, college football, while they may not have great quarterbacks, not a whole lot of great running backs, they've got dozens and dozens and dozens of great wide receivers. And in recent drafts, we've seen this where 10, 12, 20 guys, from the draft, are being drafted, and wide receivers are being drafted in the first 3 rounds. And, the success rate of them has to be close to 75%. I'm not talking about, all pro type levels. But every team has one. Even Carolina, has this great young wide receiver. So it makes more and more sense to me that teams, draft a guy, play him 4 years. When it's time for him to make the big bucks, let him go and draft a new guy. Now the 49ers did that with Pearsall. And unfortunately for him, he's had issues on and off the field. But that doesn't mean he won't eventually turn into a good receiver, maybe even by the end of the year. But I would think next year that they've got to come right back and draft another, first or second round guy to play wide receiver and kind of start that progression where, okay, you guys are going to be our receivers for 4 years. And they'll be every bit as good as Ayuk and Debo were. And then all of a sudden, with Shanahan's brilliance, you will see that, oh, gee, Purdy, wow, Purdy's a great quarterback. I didn't realize this. Well, you didn't realize this because his receivers were so bad. And I think, there are other teams. And I would even, you look at, you talked about Carolina and their issues at quarterback. And I agree with you. But, I just look at their play calling, and you're right. If you've got a quarterback like Russell Wilson was in Seattle, you can't just drop him back and have him throw the ball over the head of defensive linemen who are a foot taller than him. You've got to scramble, roll him out, design plays, that have him throwing the ball from the outside the hash mark rather than, right over the head of these, 6'7" defensive tackles. And Carolina, I was just very disappointed that they didn't do that a lot. And when they did, was like Young scrambled with the intent of running rather than finding somebody open down the field. I thought the design was poor. I thought that his own, when Russell Wilson scrambled, in the old days, he was looking down the field. And a lot of his best passes were passes that were thrown after, escaping trouble and having no defensive lineman in front of him. And I just think that a team if you're going to commit to a quarterback like Young, you have to commit to that kind of a passing attack. And I didn't see it. That was disappointing about this game. We don't get to see Carolina a lot out here, thank goodness, maybe. But but I was just, because they've got Leggett, who was a very high draft pick. They have Coker, who's a nice down the field receiver. And, of course, they've got McMillan, who's considered to be this, star in the making. So they seem to have a collection of receivers. They could use a tight end, certainly. But I think they have the weapons to be successful. They just need to have a better design. And that, that to me is probably the biggest issue in the NFL these days when it comes to it, not just these days, it's happened for a while. When it comes to passing attacks is you might have a brilliant plan as a passing, coordinator or what, but it ain't going to work with the personnel you have. So you're either going to have to change all your personnel or you're going to have to adapt your system to what you have. And in most cases, drafting all new personnel isn't a possibility. So, you need to come in with the idea that, all right, my quarterback is 5'10" or whatever, and we're not going to, have him stand back there like Herbert, and throw the ball over the top. And so, that to me is the disappointment of Carolina's passing game.
If it wasn't for Jonathan Taylor and we push a narrative for him to win the MVP in a sense, and maybe he still can and change that long time thing of having to give it to a quarterback. But if it wasn't for Jonathan Taylor, then I would be pushing for our man Jahmyr Gibbs to maybe have a shot at winning that. His numbers are astounding now at this point, and we're going to talk about this Lions game in a second. But the only good, consistent thing that the Lions have going on right now is Jahmyr Gibbs overall. If it wasn't for him, I wonder where that team would be, to be honest. So Gibbs, another week with 2 touchdowns. He's been simply fantastic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And, the offensive design, which has gone, remember with this team the last year and maybe even the last 2 years, basically he's only played half the time. They ran the ball with Montgomery time and time again last year. And even 2 years ago when it was like, gee, you got this Gibbs guy. Why are we running up the middle, with this Montgomery guy? And now they're really featuring him a whole lot more. And yeah, you're right. He's remarkable. He is the top running back threat, both as a pass catcher and now even running the ball. And so, the problem with, MVP candidates is just the beauty's in the eye of the beholder when it comes to voting for these awards. There are a lot of people, and I say, myself, I'm one of them, that you've got to be on one of the top teams in order to be considered for the most part. I mean, there are going to be guys who just, O.J. Simpson rushing
Right.
for 2,000 yards for the last place team. Okay, we're going to consider him. But this is why the quarterbacks win this award so often, is that when you look at the very top teams and even the teams that have surprised to get to the top, oftentimes it's because the quarterback play has been good. I mean, I wouldn't vote for Drake May to win the award, but he's going to finish in the top. If the season were ended today, he'd be in the top 3 or 4 just based on New England's record.
Right.
And so that's going to be hard to overcome. Certainly, Detroit gets on TV a lot. Obviously, they got another primetime game this week. So Gibbs will have a chance to dazzle the voters. But Detroit's schedule is just so tough. And they've really struggled. They almost lost to the Giants last week. I'm just not sure that when all said and done, that they're going to have, 2 or 3 more, fewer wins than some of these top teams. The teams like I'm talking about, the teams with the quarterback, who, like May, who are going to, who are seen as, the guys that elevated these teams to success. And I mean, you've even kind of seen the narrative change, not that he's an MVP candidate, on another game that's coming up here, that you've seen the narrative change on Prescott. I mean, his stock has to be significantly higher today than it's ever been. And why is that? Well, it's because Dallas is actually winning. Dallas is always going to be a marquee team that everybody gets to see and laugh at usually. But this year, all these games that we're seeing Dallas, wow, they beat Philadelphia. Wow, they beat, this week they go up against Kansas City. And, if they happen to win this game, now Dak's value is just, he's the same quarterback. Their defense is playing better. They got better receivers now. But he's seen us in such a greater light because they're winning. And like I said, that in the end, that's what I think it'll come down to is, Matthew Stafford
he's going to win it.
Yes. At this point, I got to believe he's the favorite in mostly because they look like the best team in the league right now.
Right.
And their schedule is not such that, wait until, you talked about Jonathan Taylor, and we started to see the start of this last week when they played Kansas City, very good team. He didn't have much of a game. Now they go up against Houston, not an elite team necessarily, but an elite defensive team where you wouldn't project them to have a great game. They got a lot of tough games coming up. So I can't imagine he's going to be in the discussion later on.
Right.
I think Gibbs, like you said,
He's going
will pass him.
He's going to pass him.
Gibbs will pass him in that discussion. But if Detroit loses to Green Bay this week, and they still got tough games coming up as well. I just think he'll fall off. Based on the team's just not doing well enough, and then it'll end up coming down to, we got May and we got Stafford. Which one we voting for? And like I said, at this point, I think you would look at the Rams and say, "Wow, they're a lot better team than New England." We got to give it to the Rams guy. So that, that's where I see the MVP race coming down to.
All right, Lions -2.5, 48.5 against Green Bay for the first game on Thanksgiving. So the Lions are cheap if you like them. I noticed when the Lions played the Ravens on that Monday night game, it just seemed like the pressure was getting in Goff's face just too easily. And I said, this is something to pay attention to. If he's going to have that kind of pressure in his face, the Lions are going to have it a little bit tougher to get going consistently on offense. And that seems to be the case. He seems to be getting rattled a little too much, which makes me like Gibbs even more as a prop because he's an easy dump-off option at that point. So I think he's an auto play just about every week now in terms of his receive yards. You can almost auto play him for 2 touchdowns, considering he gets that nearly half the games he plays anyway, if not 3 at times, right? I think he's got 3 touchdowns at least once this year. And here comes the Green Bay with arguably one of the best defense in the league, Parsons and company. So are things going to change for Detroit in this game? I got to feel like they're going to feel the pressure a little bit here. I'm worried for Detroit. I want to see Green Bay turn into that fun, explosive Green Bay team here at some point, and maybe without Jacobs. They'll go to the air a little bit more here against the secondary, which is susceptible like the Lions are. So I think I'm actually leaning with Green Bay in this game. I'm not going to be shocked if either one wins it. I'd be very wary of going over. This looks like an easy overplay, but that Green Bay defense, like I said, just might have enough to kind of rattle everything on offense for the Lions. Now, again, it's a cheap price. It's a field goal. I think the safest thing for me, though, is just to take Gibbs on a score. Actually, he's minus 185 for 1, which is a good number for him. And you're getting over 3-1 on 2 scores, plus 330. So I'll look at the Gibbs props. He's 34.5 receiving as well. I think he'll get that. But they have some athletes on that back end for Green Bay as well. So maybe not a 100-yard game like he got a couple weeks back. Good game. This is going to be a hard game for Detroit. If they win this, they're going to have to earn it. And honestly, I think it's ripe for the picking for Green Bay. But Jordan Love could not capitalize on that himself. So what are you looking at here?
No, I agree with a lot of what you said there. I'm very disappointed in Goff. I mean, and maybe it's not his fault. I mean, but it's kind of the realization that he's immobile. He stands there, and you're right. They're getting a lot of pressure on him. The offensive line isn't as good as it was, and he can't do anything about it when there's pressure on him. He doesn't scramble at all. He never runs the ball. But even that, he doesn't escape the pocket really well. It's like they have a scripted offense where he's instructed, look, you got to stand there and throw the ball, on time to our targets. In the system, it's just not working. He takes a lot of sacks. I think he's a sitting duck for Green Bay's defense this week, unless they do kind of what you said they should do, which is throw a lot of short passes. Now, the problem with that is you've only got one receiver, Whiteout, who catches short passes, and you have no third receiver on the team. You got a number 2 receiver who runs only downfield passes, and your tight end is injured. And so you've got Gibbs, who, as one of your alternatives and a really good one. I'm shocked that the numbers you said there were so low because he's such an obvious pass the ball, swing it to him out of the backfield kind of a guy. But I think, a real surprise in this game. I mean, and Green Bay's defense is so good that I got to believe that they're going to be flocking to Gibbs in the flat, and that's going to leave a lot of room open for the tight end. which, like I said, they don't have their good ones, but they do throw to right a fair amount. And I gotta believe he's going to be a very, very popular target in this game because they gotta get the ball out of Goff's hands quickly. And yeah, a lot of that's going to St. Brown. Some of that's going to Gibbs. But the one guy that most likely to me to be forgotten is Wright. And
You're right, because I already forgot about him.
Yeah, well, I think he had either 5 or 6 targets last week, and there's even more.
That's more than I thought he would have. Yeah.
There's even more reason to throw the ball to him. He's not, he's not going to, I'm not saying take him over 50 yards or what have you. Although I think he's got potential to get close to that because he's, if he catches 5 balls at 5, 6, 8 yards a pop, he's going to go over 30. He's going to be close to 40. He might even, get into the end zone. But to me, he'd be a sneaky play for the Lions. Now, you've talked about this game. What kind of game is this going to be? It really shouldn't be a high-scoring game. But Lions games at home almost always are.
Right. That's the one.
And the more the Lions score, Green Bay will play a slow-down game if their defense can keep them in that kind of game. But this is going to be one of those games where if the Lions start scoring, then Green Bay is going to have to start scoring. And they're, like you mentioned, they're capable of it. The Lions are very susceptible to the pass. Green Bay's got a ton of downfield weapons. I got to believe Watson is going to catch at least one long touchdown pass in this game. And he seems to be progressing into more and more their primary target. And has always been a touchdown guy. So, it's just something tells me, I've just seen enough Thanksgiving games to say somehow, some way, this is going to be high score.
Right.
And like I said, the reason, the way it can be is if Detroit comes right out and scores. And it's kind of, instead of Green Bay, okay, we stopped them. Oh, we got to their quarterback. Let's just run the ball and punt it back to them and go do it again. Well, you can do that against certain teams. Probably not wise playing that way against Detroit, and you're definitely not going to play that way if Detroit has come right out and put points on the board against you. So, illogically, I'm going to say that this game, will go over the total somehow, some way. And if it does, well then, Watson and Gibbs and my guy Wright are going to be worth investing in.
All right, Gibbs is 34.5. Nothing on Brock Wright yet on 2 sports books. In fact, we're just really limited on who's available at the moment still. They're getting they'll be real hesitant here on Thanksgiving Eve posting these stats. Christian Watson's 54.5. And if I recall right, these 2 teams were going to a dead over the last time they played on Thanksgiving. And then they had Operation Shutdown for the last quarter and a half. It ended up being an under game. Let's see here. Christian Watson plus 190 for a touchdown.
That to me sounds better than the yardage.
Right.
He's someone they use at the goal line. There still, I guess, remains a question as to whether Jacobs is going to be playing in this game or not. It sounds like he will, but
I have him listed right now minus 115 for a touchdown.
Yeah, see, I think that the talk has been that he will play, but if he does, will it be on a full-time basis? Wilson came in last week, did some nice things. I got to believe that's going to carve him out some playing time, regardless of whether Jacobs plays or not. So I'm not sure what to do, in terms of their running game. But I still think that Green Bay's best way to score points in this game will be through the air, and and that means Watson. I like it. I take him to score a touchdown. In fact, if we were just playing a three-teamer, 3-leg parlay in this game, I take him to score a touchdown. I take Gibbs over his receiving yards, and I take Wright, when it pops, over his number of receptions. It's hard to say which one I would like the best, because if he pops at like plus 450 for a touchdown, then that becomes very intriguing. So I'd want him involved some way. I'd want Gibbs passing involved some way, and I'd want Watson for a touchdown. That would be my three plays of this game.
Jordan Love has rushed for over 10 yards 7 different times this season, and he's at 10.5. So I'd be willing to maybe take that as well. On a ticket. All right. This is interesting.
Well, then, like I said, the nice thing, Green Bay, has been a very conservative team of late because their defense has played well. And if they get into more of a passing mode, then you're right. Then that becomes a very easy number to top. But if it's a conservative game, a low-scoring game, then he's not going to run the ball as much.
Right. Okay. Next game on the board is Dallas and Kansas City, our AFC West Chiefs. I think this is the first time I recall Kansas City playing in Dallas on Thanksgiving in my lifetime. I don't think we've seen this. So let's see here. I'm stuck on this Green Bay game. Let me get out of it. The Chiefs are minus 3.5, 52.5. I've seen enough. I like the Cowboys mojo. I really do. I think that this is too many points at home. Kansas City skated by. We know that they play close games. And Dallas has been explosive. So I think that the Chiefs better have their A game offensively going here against an improved Dallas defense, much maligned for a good part of the season. So Kansas City cannot play like they did last week, or they're gonna lose this game. And they probably should have lost last week if the Colts knew how to run and protect the lead, which they didn't do late in that affair when the Chiefs won it overtime. Good momentum for Dallas coming off that win against Philadelphia, their rivals. I don't think this is a flat spot for them. I like Dallas to pull the outright win here. And if CD's going to draw a lot of attention, let's just keep going to the well with Pickens. He seems to love Pickens as much as he does Lamb nowadays. You're getting Pickens at plus 155 for a touchdown. You're getting a good number on him for receptions as well. I'd be willing to probably do something with that. Let's see. Pickens on his receptions is at 7. You get 2-1. I think that's in play. I know they like to throw the ball to more deep. He's not your underneath pattern guy, but he's been getting a lot of targets from Dak. And I don't see why the Cowboys would change their game plans. Now, they may go into this thinking that, let's keep Pat Mahomes off the field on the sideline. That's how you beat the Chiefs. Javonte Williams must have a heavy dose of him running. And I think that's everyone's kind of stereotypical thought. But Mahomes hasn't shown that he can beat teams lately through the air. He's been awfully inconsistent. He's been making his own mistakes. I would almost dare have Dallas try to be aggressive offensively and dare the Chiefs to try to keep up with them. So I'm going to take Dallas here, and I would look, as opposed to taking the over 52.5 here, because you can't rely on the Chiefs to go over in a game, I would perhaps just look at the Dallas team total points. But I think this is a game in which Dallas wins. I think Pickens can have a big day, and I'll take a look at the Cowboys. I'll take a look at the Cowboys team total points at 24.5 to go over the total there. They'll get 27-31. In fact, I would almost be willing here as well. I'm going to get 8-1 if the Cowboys can win this game by 13 points or more. I don't think that's out of the question. So all Cowboys for me in this one. What do you like?
Well, we don't disagree strongly very often, but I think this is one of those cases. I don't think these two teams are in the same hemisphere. I think Dallas were getting blown out last week until Philadelphia decided to call off the dogs.
Yep.
I don't see any way Dallas stops Kansas City's passing game. They just have too many weapons. I don't think either team's going to run the ball in this game. There's no way Dallas is running the ball against Kansas City's defense. I mean, look what they did last week to Taylor. Dallas doesn't have half that running game. It's going to be and Kansas City's running game, while it's decent at times, Dallas with their improvements, has helped. They had a good game against Barkley last week. They've become a better defensive team against the run. I just think that I don't see either team running the ball here. I think it has a chance to be a very high-scoring game. And I just think Kansas City has way too many weapons in their passing game. They've got 4 or 5 guys they can go to. Rice, obviously they throw the ball to Rice more than anybody else. But Kelsey has his big games. One of these days Worthy is going to pop big. They've just got too many guys for Dallas to deal with. And like I said, the beginning of that game last week, the Philly game against Dallas, to me was kind of like, oh my God, Philly's going to win this game 45-0. I mean, they can't stop their passing game.
Right.
And they only have 2 passing weapons. I mean, the Kansas City has more like 6. I don't know. I think Kansas City's going to run up big numbers in this game. I think Dallas can counter. I mean, like you said, the Dallas passing game is going great. No team has a better 1-2 tandem in receivers than they do. And their quarterback's is going really well. And Kansas City is not they're a good defensive team, but they aren't necessarily a great pass rushing defensive team. So I think Dak will have time to throw the ball to his wideouts. I see a 41-24 kind of game. I think this is going to be a very high scoring game for Kansas City. And if so, well, I take Mahomes over his touchdown passes in this game. But I think Rice has got to be the guy. He's just someone they throw the ball to more than any other receiver. So if they're gonna score 4 or 5 touchdowns in this game, well, then Rice is going to get at least 1 and maybe 2. I think Mahomes could throw for 3 or 4. So I focus on that side of it myself.
Mahomes minus 250 for 2, plus 148 for 3, plus 470 for 4. Receiving.
Yeah, that's not a great price for 3 touchdowns.
Right.
And so I don't know.
He hasn't been doing it either. I mean, that's the thing.
Right. But in Kansas City, they've kind of been in the Lions mode. In other words, every week Kansas City plays someone good. We've seen them on TV a lot, and it just seems that they played Philadelphia. They played Buffalo. They played Denver. They played the Chargers. I mean, they every week. Even last week. Finally they get breather. They play the Colts. No. The Colts. They're one of the top teams. And now, they get one easy this week. They get Dallas. Well, you know what? Dallas is improving, but I would say Dallas is probably one of the 3 weakest teams Kansas City's played all season. And that's, no disrespect to Dallas. I think Dallas is a decent team, but Kansas City's schedule's been a monster. I don't know. I just see them, there's gotta be, there will be a Kansas City guy in this game, an unknown guy who gets a touchdown. I have no idea who you're trying to predict.
Smith-Schuster.
Like that.
Smith-Schuster.
But yeah, right. So I'll just stick with Rice in this game. Take him over his yardage, take him for 2 TDs and, 1 TD and then maybe even 2 TDs and leave it at that.
I'll get the TD prices in a second. Juju Smith-Schuster, 10.5 receiving yards is his over-under. And I think Flournoy has kind of made his way into being a nice little third option at wide receiver, to be honest. 6.5 for him, receiving yards. I can see both of those.
That's very good thinking in this game. Is that especially Kansas City, but even Dallas to a lesser extent. If they're going to put up big passing numbers, which I think both of them will, like I said, I don't see either team running the ball effectively in this game. And if both quarterbacks are throwing for over 300 yards, which I think is a good possibility, then there's going to be a bunch of guys who get their 20 yards, get their 30 yards on 1 catch, on 2 catches, or whatever. So it would be, it'd be great to grab a handful of them, and instead of throwing everything at Lamb and Pickens and Rice and Worthy and Kelsey, well, pick the Flournoy and pick the Kansas City backup tight end, and throw a couple other guys in there who are all between 5 and 20 yards receiving, because if you're going to get to 300 passing yards for each quarterback, there's going to be a handful of these guys who contribute to it. So I think that could be kind of fun. Take your stab in the dark with a couple of them, or just grab a handful of them, kind of like Halloween. Grab a handful of candy. You're bound to find a couple that you really like.
Right,
so,
right.
That would be a fun little parlay to throw together, a four-player parlay with four obscure guys who basically only need to catch 2 balls in order to get over their total, maybe even just 1. And I just hope the game turns into a pinball, a game like I think it will.
Other candidates on that list would be Turpin at 16.5. He just seems to do nothing sometimes. Javonte Williams, 9.5. Marquise Brown, 18.5. Jake Ferguson, 33.5 seems low.
Yeah, they haven't used him that much lately, which surprises me. They tend to look for him at the goal line a lot more than they do in the middle of the field. I guess that's just because why are we throwing to him for 5 yards when we can get Lamb or Pickens for 20 at a pop? And so, but yeah, that's I'm kind of soured on him a little. Yeah, I mean, Turpin is intriguing because he's one of those guys who can catch a little bubble screen and run for 20 yards.
Right.
And all of a sudden, the last you see of him other than on punt returns. And he's gotten you his
He
number.
can score for you on special teams as well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'll leave that to you, but I think it would be fun. It would be fun rooting interest every time Kansas City or Dallas drop back to pass. You have a very good chance they're throwing to one of the guys who's going to help you. And just start checking them off one at a time. Okay, he's got his 15 yards. Okay, let's move on. Let's throw to somebody else next time. I think it would make for fun viewing.
I got a free $100 play for Thanksgiving, so I think I'll probably stretch the Smith-Schuster and Flournoy yards to 20 each at decent positive money, and then we'll try to find 1 or 2 other things as well. Okay, Rice for 2 touchdowns is at 5-1 for him.
I like the price.
All right, Baltimore -7, 51.5. We're hearing rumors about Lamar just being injured the last few weeks, which makes sense. He hasn't been playing at his best. And the Ravens have seemingly been going through the motions. but winning. And the Bengals are coming off somewhat competitive loss playing to New England. But now they get Burrow back. Exit T. Higgins, though, in concussion protocol. I think he's going to be out. Am I correct? If I'm looking at this now, I do not see T. Higgins listed anywhere. Okay. So shorthanded now again are the Bengals offense. It's a division game, so maybe that makes things more interesting. These two teams always play over the total in recent years, and they fly over it. I think the one game last year had 80-something points, and then the other one wasn't too far off of that. We're just asking for 51.5 here. I would like that better if we had a T. Higgins available. I just don't know what you're really going to get out of Cincinnati on the road here on Thanksgiving night in Baltimore. It's a bad spot. Even with Burrow coming back, there's going to be some sort of a rust factor. I just got to figure that the Ravens are the better team here and that they're going to cover the spread. Again, I don't think I want to, and I know these teams go over, but man, that's going to be the one thing everyone's betting on Thanksgiving night is over 51.5 in this game. And I think you might be hard-pressed to get there, especially if the Ravens are having success in the running game. So give me the Ravens to cover. I think they probably win by 14 points or so. I think, 28-17 sounds fair. 28-14 sounds fair. I just don't know what we're really going to get out of the Bengals offense at the end of the day. So too many points for me to try to go over on Thanksgiving night and sit there and try to get all stressed out, trying to get some overs. Henry is minus 230 for a touchdown. He does seem like the most logical one to score for me. And his number for 2 is going to be really cheap. It's at plus 260. But I think at the end of the day, you can probably do worse things in the world than parlay a Derrick Henry for 2 and a Jahmyr Gibbs for 2, which gets you a nice payout of 15-1 overall. And then maybe if you want to throw Dave Delgrande's Rashee Rice in that parlay as well, then let's see, that's going to pay 92-1 for Rice, Gibbs, and Henry, all to get 2 touchdowns. I just don't know what we're really going to get out of the Bengals offense. I don't trust them. It's not like I super trust Baltimore down the road here, but they should be the better team, and I think they should be able to cover the spread. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I agree that I think this is Baltimore's game all the way. My concern is, man, they weren't impressive at all last week.
No,
really
exactly.
The score of that game was much more impressive looking than how it got there. If their offense is going to struggle like that against a weak opponent like that, well, what's it going to do this week? Like you said, the quarterback is a big concern. I mean, if he's not scrambling around, not getting those extra first downs with his legs, not a threat with his legs, well, then that makes it harder to run the ball. It really restricts your passing game. And yet all that can be true, and they could still win this game by 2 or 3 touchdowns. I just don't think Cincinnati is a very good team. I mean, this is Baltimore. I said this last week. They're on a nice little roll now, and I think the roll's a little slower, even though they won by double digits last week. I just think this is a similar easy game to what they had last week. And so I really don't think they really need to air it out or
they'll take the air out of the ball too.
Exactly.
They'll run the clock out.
Right, and they certainly have the back to do that. But to me, my favorite play in this game, maybe even my favorite play for the whole day, is consistent with that type of game plan. Cincinnati is the worst, maybe ever, team at defending tight ends.
Right.
And
Yeah, good angle.
And Baltimore, problem with Baltimore is they have two of them. And while Andrews tends to be the guy who scores touchdowns, I think this is going to be a big game for Lively. And he hasn't had a great season, but he's healthy, and he's the guy that they throw the ball more to in the middle of the field rather than down by the goal line. So I wouldn't take him to score a touchdown, but I really think he could have 2 or 3 really big, nice catches in the middle of the field. I think, and given the fact that his season average is low, that they don't normally throw the ball to him that much, this is the week where everything says throw the ball to your tight end, and you're our guy in the middle of the field, so be ready. We're coming to, we don't want our quarterback to have to scramble around. He's not healthy. He's not going to be running as much. We're just going to throw it early, and you're our guy. And so I can see him this week, catching 5 balls for 80 yards, maybe even getting a long score in there. And, what are we looking at for his receiving total? 25?
23.5.
Yeah, I mean, I really think, if you told me, if you said, well, there's a number 23.5 on this game, I would have said, well, if that's what are we going over or under that for one catch? I take the over. I think he's got a chance to catch a 24-yard pass or more in this game. Like I said, if you look at Cincinnati's numbers against tight ends, they just, I don't know. They just don't. They think this is the 1960s where you don't have to guard tight ends because all they do is block. I just think that he could have he could be a really fun guy on a greedy ticket to price up. I think that his over 23.5 is the best play of the day. But I don't know how high you could go with him. But if you could take him to 60 yards, and get whatever 8-1, 10-1, or whatever they would put on a reasonable number like that, I think that would be a fun thing to do. With my give me a tight end parlay from Wright to Lively in some way, shape, or form. I think that you could cash a really nice ticket this week. So definitely, as my play of the day, give me Lively over his 23.5. I'm already marking that as a winner.
Likely for 50 is plus 450, for 60 yards plus 750 overall.
I mean, I think it's I think it's reasonable to think he could get there. Like I said, if you give me a 2-teamer from Wright over 5 or more catches to Lively over 60 yards, each at a nice price, 50-1 between the two of them. Count me in.
I don't. It'd be nice to get these right numbers up.
We're not these up on right yet, but I don't know why. I mean, especially on a Thanksgiving game when everybody's looking to play these games. I don't know why they wouldn't put a number up on basically everything. So
right.
You may have to wait till tomorrow morning on that.
All right. Right now, if I were to do this on my $100 free play, it would pay $6,100, and that would be likely for 50 yards. I'll play a slightly conservative route on that. Watson for a touchdown. Juju Smith-Schuster for 15 yards, and Flournoy for 6.5 yards.
Well, that's a heck of a price.
So $100 pays out $6,100 for all that. That's not the worst thing in the world.
No, I like it.
All right.
Well, that's but like I said, if I had one recommendation for for the 3 games, it would be Lively.
Let's see here.
My number 2 recommendation would be right number of catches. And then then you got the usual suspect you already talked about. Watson to get a TD, Rice to get a TD or 2. Those would be my my gutless ticket plays.
What, would you trust Gibbs to get 2?
I mean, I would say yes. Like I said, I mean, it's a tough defense, but there's just something about those first 2 games that, I've seen enough games on Thanksgiving, to know that 75% of them are higher scoring than you would have thought. The Green Bay defense scares me, but it is Green Bay and Detroit at Detroit, at the Motor Speedway, after all. So I got to believe that there's going to be scoring in that game. And it should be competitive. I mean, we're talking 28-24, something like that, where each team will get at least 3 touchdowns. In which case, Gibbs is, I wouldn't say 50-50, but close to it to get two of those 4 Detroit touchdowns.
All right, man.
And you're getting a nice price.
You get a nice price. I think I like the idea to parlay him with Henry, just them 2 alone, to be honest. I think that's a good chance of that happening. But you said it, though. Lamar could kill you at the goal line.
But if in fact Lamar, there's really no reason for Lamar to take this week's game any more seriously than last week's. I mean, it just seemed like there was something wrong last week with the Baltimore offense. It just didn't seem to really, they didn't show up. They didn't really play with any energy in that game. And the energy comes from Lamar. And yet they played that way and they won comfortably. It was kind of like, okay, told you we wouldn't have to try hard and we'd win this game easily. Now this week we play the same opponent. And let's just do the same thing. Lamar, don't get hurt. Keep handing the ball off to our guys. Keep throwing the ball over the middle to the tight end. We don't need any heroics. And so I think their approach will be very conservative. And yet, because Cincinnati's defense is so bad, they should be able to score more points than they did last week. And Cincinnati's offense is a lot better than what Baltimore, faced last week. So they may have to score more than they did last week. But I still think that there's, they can do that by running the ball and playing conservatively. So I think we can get to, Baltimore scoring over 30 points this week. And if so, kind of the same principle as Detroit. If Baltimore scoring 4 TDs, well, you can count on Henry to get a couple of them.
Okay, I don't have much of a strong feeling for this one at the moment. The Eagles on offense are sputtering. You have a lack of confidence in your man, Caleb Williams. He's getting 7 points, 44.5. Can the Bears contend in this game?
I'd say no. I'm not, I don't know how the Bears are doing it. They're winning close games. I think the Eagles defense is better than the Bears offense. And if that's the case, then the Bears are going to be in trouble because the Eagles if they continue passing the ball as effectively as they have, certainly in this last game while they tried to pass the ball, they're going to get their points. I'm not sure Chicago can match them in points. So I think that I don't know why. I know they're getting criticism for going away from their passing game in the second half of that game last week. So I don't think they're going to be calling off the Dogs this week if they get in that same situation. So I think it's a green light for Philly's passing game.
All right. Let's see here. If it's a green light for the passing game for Philly, my man Barkley's a 19.5. He always gets that. You know what? He's the only guy listed on the receiving yards right now. Interesting.
Wait, are we, on vacation or what?
Yeah, I guess so. Touchdown wise, AJ Brown plus 125, Devontae Smith plus 155. He seems like a logical candidate to me. He's been the most consistent.
Yeah, I mean, they both do. I mean, it's kind of surprising that they're. I mean, given the fact that Barkley's not scoring a whole lot these days, and Hurts, he'll get his on the quarterback sneaks or whatever. I was impressed with their passing game last week. If Brown plays effectively, their offense is way better than when he doesn't play effectively. I think he's kind of the key to their attack. He's their most talented player, and when they can get him involved, it opens up the other side of the field. It opens up the tight end. Now you're running the ball. Now you're swinging to the back. Now Hurts is running. I mean, they've got a lot of weapons, but it's those games where Brown, it just doesn't seem to try. And it just it often just bogs things down. Well, all we can do today is run the ball. And they're not running the ball that well this year. So I think, Brown has to be in a good state of mind this week after what he did last week. So I can see him putting up big numbers again. And I can see Smith doing the same thing. So, to me, when they're both plus prices, give me both of them. And I know one of the two is going to win, possibly both.
Let's see here. We'll look at the stats real quick for Hurts, or his prop number, because if they can get it through the air, 211.5. So over that?
Yes. I mean, like I said, I think they had to have learned their lesson last week that, and I'd say Chicago is kind of in the same boat, a little bit less as Dallas in terms of Chicago's got a lot of offensive weapons. I mean, you can't sit on a 21-0 lead against them and expect, to win at the end, 21-10. They're going to come back. They're going to make it interesting. You need to keep piling up the points. And I think that if that lesson was learned last week, then you're going to see Philly come out in the second half, having already passed for 170 yards, and then immediately, put up another 100 in the third quarter. And now it's 35-10. Now we can call off the dogs. So that was a big mistake last week.
All right, let me just play around with one number here, and we'll get out of here. Passing touchdown wise, Hurts over 1.5. I'll throw him on a ticket. We'll skip the Cincinnati game in case that's all one-way traffic with Henry. Let's see here. We'll throw Dak and Mahomes on for their touchdowns, correct? So Dak over 1.5, minus 132. Do we want to take Mahomes 1.5 or for 2.5?
Well, I just think 1.5 just doesn't get you anything, right?
Minus 250. No, it juices it up a little bit, but not really. Yeah, you get a better number with the 3 if you want to pump this parlay up. And in fact, it about doubles the price.
I think I'm picking Kansas City as the highest scoring team of the 6 on Thanksgiving. So 3 touchdowns to me is very reasonable.
Okay, and then on the other side let's see, the first game here. Both of these quarterbacks for 2 passing, or should we just rely on golf? Maybe?
No, not the first game.
Just golf.
That game to me is a lot trickier because it's Green Bay does not want to play a high scoring game, and if Green Bay can keep the score down, then it's going to shoot. Detroit's still going to throw the ball, but if Green Bay can run the ball, they will try to run the ball. So I don't know. I'm hesitant in that game because of how it could turn out.
If we don't use golf, those three guys are plus 530. If we add golf, 10-1. All right, just playing around. All right, Dave. Good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not counting the night game. I very much look forward to the schedule. Two really good games to start the day. I mean, and especially, I mean, you don't get it a lot with the Dallas game because they're always playing Washington, but Dallas and Kansas City, and the way Dallas was playing, Kansas City's gonna, they're back to the wall a little bit. It's not like they're 10-2 and they can afford to overlook this game. They need to win this game, as much as Dallas does. And so I think we're going to get I really look forward to that game. I think this is going to be a very interesting and very entertaining game. And then, I may or may not be watching that night game.
Sneak peek to the weekend. As far as a scale of opportunity goes, 1 being bad, 10 being great. What are you looking forward ahead to Sunday with?
I have a great play on Sunday. You want to hear it now, or you want?
Yeah. Give us a teaser in case we want to wrap it. Some things in with these games with it. Yeah.
There's a lot of and of course it's one of the obscure games. New Orleans is playing Miami.
Right.
Okay, and New Orleans just lost their running back, right, Kamara, and there's been a rush to the fantasy waiver wire for this guy Neal, who replaced him. Well, Neal played a lot last week. He caught a lot of passes, which is good. Well, and what it showed us in that game was he is not a guy they're going to use at the goal line. He's not a guy they're going to use running the ball much at all, and they don't have anybody else. Last week, I don't know if you saw this. Last week, my man, Taysom Hill, carried the ball 10 times.
Yep, he's evolved a lot more. Yep.
10 times last week. Now, he didn't gain much yardage. He's not going to be a guy that gains much yardage, but he's going to be a guy they use at the goal line as a quarterback, as a running back. If you're telling me that there's tight end who's going to get 10 touches in a game, well, I want him involved somehow, some way. And especially in this guy's case, where majority of his touches are going to be at the goal line. And so I can see him this week throwing a touchdown pass, possibly catching a touchdown pass, definitely running for a touchdown or two. He's the, Olave, you would say, is the most logical New Orleans guy to score in this game. But if they get down by the goal line, it becomes a Hurts kind of thing. That, well, I don't care what else we got going. We've got this tight end that we can put in a quarterback or fullback or running back, wherever you want to put them, and we'll just run them up the middle and we'll score against the Miami defense. That's very average. And so I think that Hill, I think you could use him in a variety of ways, certainly to score a touchdown, maybe even to score 2 touchdowns, heck, maybe even to score 3 touchdowns.
Right.
Will he have passing yards? Will he have receiving yards available? I'd be curious to hear all of his numbers, because I really think that for whatever reason, they're enamored with this guy. I can't believe he carried the ball 10 times last week, because it wasn't even as a quarterback. It's I don't know. It's just a very unique situation. And, if you know me the way that I've talked on this show, I'm looking for the odd angle. I'm not looking for the one where we have a a long history of numbers that we can average out. We can give you, okay, this guy's going to 67.5 receiving yards this week. Well, gee, guess what? That's his season average. Anybody could have guessed that. But in a case like this, where you got a unique guy, who would have guessed that he would carry the ball 10 times last week? Now, if he had, Atlanta's a good defensive team. If he had scored 2 or 3 touchdowns last week, it'd be a completely different thing. Everybody would have been alerted that this is what they were doing. But I think it went completely under the radar. And I think that, especially with, he didn't score any touchdowns. He got 17 yards rushing, I want to say. I got to believe his numbers this week are all going to be very low. I don't know. He's definitely my my play of the week, my play of the Sunday games. I just don't know exactly, when his numbers pop up, if they ever do. I'd love to hear what they are, because I think there's going to be a lot of different ways to go with him.
We'll have to look at those our next conversation. Plus 135 for 1 touchdown, though, and 10-1 for 2. I mean, do we have any worries? I didn't know that Audric Estime was on the Saints, and here I see him listed at 12-1 for a touchdown. It seems to me he was a halfway decent back.
Well, they don't seem to think so.
Right.
I mean, again, based on last week, it was all about,
Devin Neal. Yes.
Yeah, getting Hill in there, and again, if you just look at how he was used, I mean, yeah, he did carry the ball a fair amount of times, not effectively, and you can kind of see why they didn't use him at the goal line, because they threw the ball a ton to him, out of the backfield, where he was very successful. So he's a guy that, if you get down by the goal line, you want to run it around the end, first and goal from the 8. Well, then maybe he's going to be your guy. I'm telling you, if you get the ball inside the 5-yard line, if he's on the field, he's going to be going in motion somewhere, and Hill's going to plunge forward. If this were against the Eagles, or against Kansas City, or against the team that is tough to score on, and they got a tough defensive front, then all right, you know what? I don't care how many times he carries the ball. He's not. I can't recommend him. But this is Miami. This is
everyone runs the ball on Miami. We know that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm being generous by saying they're a very average defensive team, and so it's just one of those. Again, the numbers. They could surprise me. They could put, his rushing total is 32.5, and like you said, his TD is minus 150. Oh, geez. Okay, they priced him out of out of this whole equation. But you already said that 1 touchdown is a plus number.
Plus money. Yep.
Yeah, and 2 touchdowns, which these things are hard to predict. I mean, even with Hurts, even when Hurts is going to be the guy down by the goal line, the 2 yards and in, he's going to sneak the ball, in. So you got to count on him to score at least once a game. Well, sometimes that happens, and sometimes it's twice a game. So you're never really quite sure what opportunities you're going to have. Against a team like Miami, you can project that they're going to get opportunities. And based on the game plan last week, the usage last week, that this is their Hurts. This is their guy that, hey, we think we can plunge this guy into the end zone every time we get down there, and we're going to keep trying it until we do. And New Orleans, they really should have won that game against Atlanta last week. I mean, they outgained Atlanta in that game 2-1. They just didn't finish their drives. So it's not like they've given up on the season. I think that they'll give an honest effort against a very average team. I think they'll score their points. And I don't know. My he's he's always been kind of one of my favorites because he's an odd guy, odd usage guy. So I just think it's hard to put numbers on him. And if that's the case, I'll take advantage of it because if you skew to the to the lower end based on his season averages, then he'll pop from time to time, and I like this spot for him.
All right, well, round robin: Taysom Hill, Rashee Rice, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry. If we get 3 of the 4, it's $1,000. If we get all 4, it'll be $14,000 off of a $30 investment. $10 wins $10,000 on the 4 straight up.
Don't give away our secret though on Hill on Sunday. Be careful.
All right. All right, guys. Happy Thanksgiving, Dave Dilgrandy. That was great stuff. It looks like someone knows him in our chat. Bryn, the 420 dog, or Bryn in New York, the dog 420. Good to hear from you. I'm glad that you enjoyed Dave Dilgrandy this morning. The history of fantasy football. How about that? Our guy has been a major part of that as we've seen it through its evolution. All right, Nephew Dave will be in here in a minute or two. The Ant-Man will be coming up here as well. And what we'll do is we'll make a little art of making the ticket. How about that? Let's build a ticket for you guys here on this Thanksgiving morning, November the 27th, 2025, here on the Deep End Broadcasting Network. This is the Round Robin. I am Stephen Murray, and let's build a ticket, guys. And again, if you're just tuning in, I talked about this earlier, know that Thanksgiving and with the bookmakers, some of these lines are generally designed to take more money in from the public, people who don't gamble as much. For example, these over-unders are going to be a little bit higher than maybe what they normally would be because the average Joe Smo bettor is going to want to bet overs and not bet unders. So they're going to take advantage with the sports book and charge that little extra tax. If you recall that, I think 2 years ago, and this was the last time the Packers played the Lions, I had the over in that game. I think it was heading to the over, and then it ended up a dead under as the Packers were able to dominate in the second half. I think it was 27-17 maybe was the final, but that stayed under the total. And don't be surprised if the rest of the games to follow go under the total. I think that same weekend 2 years ago, I think all 4 unders for the Thursday and the Friday game went under. And I just sat there and kicked myself. Why did I not take the under? Why did I not take the under? I knew it. We're not going to fall for that trick this year. And in fact, I mean, we're going to play some props and play things to the over. And we want these to be fun games, of course. But we're going to have an insurance ticket for sure that has the unders involved of every game. I think if you bump them down just a hair on an alt line, and this can be part of the art of making a ticket with your 4 unders here on this NFL Thanksgiving. We'll take a look at the first game. What do we see? We see a 48.5, and everything else is just as higher, or the Eagles game tomorrow being just a hair lower than the 48.5. So if we look at 48.5 for today's game, and we're going to go to the alternate totals, again, we're looking to maybe invest the minimum. If you want to take all 4 straight over-unders, that's fine. You're going to get 10-1. That's $20 to win $200. That's fine on a Thanksgiving Sunday. Or, if you just want to play the 3 games, you'll get 6-1. So 20 will win you $120. If you want to go that route, that's fine, Mr. Conservative. But if you want to get a little frisky and play a little bit of these alt lines to the alt under, let's see what we can come up with. And we'll kind of use that old phrase we say, investing the minimum to make the maximum. So we're going to look at the alternate total over-unders. And we're going to scroll to, I think somewhere, what did I say, 27-17 last time? So you'd want to do 44.5, right? Let's get a little greedy. I'm not so sure Detroit. And I love some Lions. But let's just pretend like the Green Bay defense is completely dominant. That's going to leave us room to maneuver down. And this is purely a idea that the Green Bay defense will be dominant. So under 43.5, under 42.5 even. Let's keep it at 43.5. That's a 23-20 game. And that sounds like a decent final score to me, to be honest, if Green Bay can hold the Lions down today. So under 43.5 the first game, plus 154. Let's go to the Kansas City-Dallas game, 52.5. Now, we know the Chiefs have been playing super under games, and you just heard Dave Dolgrande make a case for this to be a very high-scoring game because all Dallas games are. Patrick Mahomes and company can just come on out and ring up 1 million points here this afternoon at AT&T Stadium. Let's kind of bet it as if we're going to bet it the way that things have actually been playing out. And that's Kansas City being somewhat of a dud offensively for the most part. So not a fade of Dallas, but more a fade of the Chiefs when we look at the over-under and go for an alternate under. Now, they're at 52.5. Let's just go down to 27-20 final score. Dallas makes that 47.5 under, still a winner. So we'll plug that number in with the Green Bay under 43.5 and the Kansas City under 47.5. Right now, we're getting almost 6-1 odds on those two. So we'll go ahead and get Cincinnati and Baltimore on here. And I think this has a chance to be the lowest of them all, especially if Burrow and company can't get off. It'll be interesting to see what the Ant-Man and Nephew Dave think about these games kind of coming up. And here's the deal, guys. If things are going to be unders, you need to be cautious with your bankroll and play some under props just to be safe. Maybe play this under ticket just to be safe, even if you're playing a bunch of over stuff. You just don't want to get caught with your pants down and lose everything. And don't forget, injuries actually help you with the unders in every way, to be honest. So unders are not the worst thing in the world when it comes to, standalone football games that we're going to have, such as these 3 in a row this afternoon. So with the over-under in this game with the Bengals and the Ravens, let me see. I'm trying to find it. It's amazing how on some of these menus, just the same thing is not in the same spot. It's in completely different spots. So here we are now with the alternate over-unders, Ravens and Bengals. And look, I'm getting plus 210 on under 45.5. But, theory is Bengals don't come out. Joe Burrow, rusty. T. Higgins out, right? Joe Burrow, rusty. His first game back. Jamar Chase, obviously, he's going to get 1 million targets. Chase Brown, whatever supporting cast can try to help out the best that they can. Maybe a Gesicki prop would be a good thing to look at as a side note. We'll get to that when we get to the games. But 45.5 sounds like a winner to me. I mean, that's 24-21 still. But even if the Ravens kind of dominate a little bit more, 31-14, still gets you home. So we'll plug in 45.5 with the Kansas City under 47.5 and Green Bay under 43.5. And then tomorrow we have winds and perhaps some messy weather. We know the Eagles like to keep the points down anyway. They have a good defense. Maybe they can stymie the Bears, and this could just be your Black Friday boring afternoon football game, right? Maybe much like how the Dolphins and Jets played out on the first Black Friday game 2 years ago. And I think even last year's Black Friday game was pretty boring, if I remember correctly. So Under in the Bears and the Eagles game, under 39.5 is at plus 164. Let's just take a chance with that. Now, we have, again, these 4 plays, art of making the tickets. 4 alternate unders. We're going against the, we got the whole family together. Let's bet the over motif. We want to be on the side of the sharp action. And the sports books, I guarantee you, will be rooting for the unders in every one of these football games. So under 43.5, never bad to be on the side of the sports book. Under 43.5 in the Green Bay game, under 47.5 in the Chief game, under 45.5 in the Bengal game, and under 39.5 in the Bears game. If you want to put a simple $20 on that, that'll pay you out $1,074. So where you were getting 10-1 on your money to keep these lines at the normal level, and you can. That's what we call the old popcorn parlay. It's kind of in reverse action. So take all the baselines, throw $10 on it or $20 to get 200. Throw another 20 on the alternate lines we just gave you, and try to hit the jackpot with the $1,075 payout. That is, let's see, 53 to 1. So we went from 10-1 to 53 on the 1 by moving each of these spreads by less than a touchdown. That's how it's done, people. All right. So that is art of making the tickets. Let me get camera number 2 going here. And we welcome in the man, the myth. He is our NFC East expert. He has another night game he must endure again this week. He hasn't played at 1 o'clock since I don't know how long, Nephew Dave. I lost track. But happy Thanksgiving, Nephew Dave. How's it going?
Happy Thanksgiving. Good morning. Yeah, it feels like it's been about 3 years since we played at 1 o'clock. Another night game. I got to figure towards the end here, Steve. I suspect that they're going to be getting flexed out of some of those games.
Interesting. Yeah.
As better games, more meaningful games will kind of be taking the forefront there. But yep, another night game against Denver. We'll see. Getting a little bit healthier. I don't think it means much at this point. But we'll see, Steve. And I think we've got some good games here today. So excited. It's Thanksgiving. We got football. We got the round robin. Everything is right in the world, Steve.
Yes, our 4th season, and we've done this Thanksgiving episode every year. So it's always kind of started to have his own little tradition, and we've had decent amount of viewers all morning too. So we're glad you're tuning in, getting basically up to the minute live odds and analysis, and we'll find all kinds of wagering angles. I have a bunch already with Del Grande, and I think I've kind of settled into my thinking as well. The Thanksgiving kind of takes me to the last second, Nephew Dave, to have all my thoughts morph together to make the wizardry work.
Yes, yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So I think I got a good angle of things today. And I'm definitely going to play these unders like I just talked about on the art of making the ticket. Your theory on the strategy just to play all straight unders. What do you think about that?
I mean, Steve, it couldn't hurt to have that ticket as kind of an insurance policy. I feel like that's something that we kind of touch on week to week. We always want to see all the action all the time, but it's just not like that. So we got 3 games tonight. One of them's due, at least for an under, I feel like. And I feel like it could be that night game that you were talking about with Cincinnati and the Ravens. I have Joe Burrow as my fantasy quarterback. He's been sitting on the IR. So as much as I would love him to just go off, he's missed some time. And I know these are, top-tier athletes, and this is what they do. But you got to figure it's going to take at least a little bit for him to get back into the motions of that, right? So we'll see if he's a little bit rusty coming off injury. And even if he's really 100%, and I feel like that makes a case for the unders too. If Baltimore's defense can show up a little bit and maybe they use Derrick Henry to just kind of ground and pound, what is the worst defense in the league. So I like the under there. Man, what Chiefs team is going to show up? If it's the right one, we could have points galore with Kansas City and Dallas. And maybe, Steve, with what we've seen from Green Bay from week to week here recently, maybe that's an under game. And I do believe that you said that as well. So, Steve, your answer is yes, play that ticket, have that insurance policy. It could never hurt at the end of the day if these games don't get off.
I could see even on the 2-game alternate just for the Green Bay and the Baltimore game.
Absolutely.
Just to be safe.
Yeah. Play 2 alternates and throw a 20 or above on it and get a decent little payout of it.
All right. You got a lot of commenters on the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Always love to hear these far off places checking us out here on the Round Robin. And our weekly show, guys, if you're new to the program, just tuning in, is every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll go through the whole morning, finding every angle on every game there is. Again, I have myself just 65 measly years on both sides of the sports book. So good to take advantage. Nephew Dave's been wagering for a while. He knows what he's doing. Always has good angles. Bill Grandy, again, basically invented fantasy football. So that gives him his clout. And the Ant-Man, of course, Antonio Banderas Jr. Has been on fire with his picks, as he always is. So worth a listen to every Sunday. Click and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Deep End, like a swimming pool, Deep End Broadcasting. All right. Nephew Dave, give me some fresh lines for these 4 games for today and tomorrow.
All right.
And let's see if we want to use Survivor for any of these guys. And we'll see if we find something we like or we want to pass it off till Sunday.
All right. Let's start off. Green Bay in Detroit. 48.5 is your number here. It's going to be -2.5 for Detroit at home. I like the Lions in this game, Steve, but a divisional Thanksgiving game, I think there's just better picks out there.
I think so too. We'll pass on this one for Survivor.
The Chiefs are in Dallas taking on the Cowboys. 52.5 is your number here. And it's going to be -3.5 for the Chiefs on the road. I'm not so sure about that. But again, Steve, I think we have better picks.
Pass, right?
Yep. Now Cincinnati, they're playing Baltimore. That's the night game. It's in Baltimore. 51.5 is your number. -7 for the Ravens on at home. I used them last week, but I feel like if you wanted to get it out of the way, you could take a chance here. Baltimore, the better team. Cincinnati defense, just bad.
Some of these pools, like this big Circa Survivor where there's 900 people left, they make them use Thanksgiving as their own unique week.
Oh,
so
wow.
You have to be able to go through the season and save some of these teams so you don't use them up. So if you have Baltimore and you're in one of those pools, you got to use Baltimore, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or maybe Philly, but I think Baltimore is the best bet.
Right.
Philly would be a pass for me tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. That should be a good, hopefully a good Black Friday game.
Okay, so we'll assume that me and Dave already did use the Ravens. So
Yep.
So we'll pick out somebody out of the cast of characters come Sunday morning. We'll go ahead and revisit that. And that's perfect timing for our man, Antonio Banderas, the great Antolini Jr., as he chimes in here on our hotline. Good morning, Antonio. Happy Thanksgiving. How are you?
Where do you think my right fist is right now?
Up the turkey's butt? Stuffing turkey into the butt of the turkey? Is that what you're doing? For real?
It is right up the cavity.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, got to be. Leg her down or smack 'em, yak 'em.
All right, good stuff. As Antonio is the chef today for Thanksgiving for his crew. Correct, Antonio? Are you the master chef?
I'm doing the turkey and nothing else.
Okay, so that's a good job.
Yeah.
And I heard good reviews from it last year as well, right? So in your second year, hopefully you didn't hold the bar up too high last year that you're going to, not achieve the greatness you did on your rookie season. Hopefully there's room to improve here.
Well, it was the first time I did it last year. I've learned from my mistakes. Always definitely take it out at least 1 to 2 days prior, because Steve, when I took this thing out this morning, there were still icicles on it.
Really?
It wasn't as frozen as it was last year, but
so it needed to come out last night, probably.
It probably should have. Now there's debates on whether you should take it out the night before, but you know what? We didn't get food poisoning last year, and guess what? Fingers crossed. How about that?
No, it's fine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
We'll be fine. I mean, when I asked my mom and dad about it last year, they said they actually normally would take it out the night before, and, just throw it in the sink. I took it out of your fridge at 8 this morning, and it's been sitting in my sink for the past 2 hours. So looks fine to me.
Boys, we have line movement this morning. Detroit, who's been 2.5 for about the last day or so, is now up to a 3-point favorite today in this game against Green Bay. So money coming in on the Lions, and also the Ravens have now dropped from 7.5 down to 7, meaning money coming in on the Bengals this morning. How about that? And this Green Bay Lions game is up a full point towards the over. So interesting line moves overall so far. All right, we're going to break down the slate. We got 4 games for you, and then we'll be back on Sunday, and we'll do the rest of the slate. So let me get my little banner up here. Get my good graphic. And then let's see here. Where are we at? There we go. Finding every angle on the board. First one up. We just mentioned it. Lions -3 now. 48.5. So it was the Monday night game against the Ravens where the Lions played at Baltimore, in which the over-under was 1 million points. It did eventually, I think, go over, but barely. And that's because the Lions used the majority of the first quarter basically to melt the clock away. And then they kind of got going after that. But what I did notice that night in victory for the Lions was that Jared Goff was getting an extreme amount of pressure up the middle. Now we fast forward all the way to this weekend, and we have Green Bay coming in, who already beat the Lions in week 1 on a very defensive-minded football game. The Lions have now bring out their man Ragnow out of retirement. Have y'all seen that?
No.
No, so they bring back their former lineman last year, talk them out of retirement to kind of come into the trenches. So I see that more as a move of desperation now for Detroit to try to solidify things and keep the pressure off of Goff. The Giants nearly beat them last week. Jahmyr Gibbs, if it wasn't for Jonathan Taylor, would probably himself be making a case for the MVP because he has been that good and he has been that one consistent thing for the Lions on offense. Green Bay, as much as I kind of wavered back and forth on them, I basically have settled to the fact that I think that they're a little bit overrated in terms of, the coach doesn't give me good play calling. The quarterback kind of lets you down at times. And you want Green Bay to be a fun dynamic football team. Let's spread it out 4 or 5 wide. We have these receivers. Let's just, get some good deep balls, some good intermediate deep balls, kind of almost like how Drake May approaches things, throw the ball 25, 30 yards down the field on a consistent basis. And we haven't seen that from them. They've been more of a running type of team. We've been waiting for Dontavian Wicks to show back up. And these Packer teams have been playing as a fun team like we've just described. But even those teams, when they get dumbed down by LaFleur, I think he's taking it to the whole another level this year as far as dumbing down this offense. And you can't even get Wicks into the end zone for one at this point. You can't get Dobbs in there for one. He hasn't been in there forever. Christian Watson finally did emerge. Obviously, Tucker Kraft was great, but he's been out. So it's mainly been the Josh Jacobs show, and we haven't seen that full-on attack from Green Bay down the field. Now, if they're wise and they're smart, they're going to come into this game guns a-blazing against Detroit because Detroit has a very susceptible secondary. Jameis Winston, when he went to Wan'Dale Robinson last week on 12 targets, was the most targets a Detroit defensive back has seen in quite some time, and he was successful. So what do you think they're going to do with Christian Watson today? Let's try to see if he is maybe our alpha dog, and maybe that can open up some things for some of these other receivers as well. If maybe he can start to draw the attention of multiple guys in the secondary. So the Packers are definitely wise to come out passing the ball today. Can we trust them to do so? That's the question. I want them to. I really do. But we could get stuck into this defensive-minded game in which their defense is just kind of dominating, and Green Bay just kind of runs, passes, run, pass, run, pass, run, get into the end zone, or kick a field goal and, try to nickel and dime the Lions, and let's try to seize first place without a doubt overall in this division this afternoon. So what do we get? Over-under suggests a lot of points. If that's the case, we're going to have to see it from both sides. That means the Lions are doing good against this Packer defense, and that means the Packer offense is able to get off and get their full complement of weapons going. I think, to me, that is a hard task to try to ask all that to happen and get to an over-under. I really want it to. That's why I think this pure under ticket is live today, that this Green Bay defense is going to be able to be the best unit of the 4 units on the football field. So if that's the case, and they hold down this Detroit offense, which I'm telling you, Laporta is going to be a bigger miss than people imagine. I know we got Dwelly and Brock Wright, but he's not even listed in there today either, I don't think. Let's see if he is even listed on my touchdown score sheet. But I'm telling you, this is just a different team without Laporta, when you got to rely on the Anthony Furskers, Ross Dwellys, Isaac Tesla, who's done nothing for us in the world, and then Jameson Williams, just inconsistent for him as well. So really, after that, it's Gibbs, St. Brown, and Montgomery. And we know Montgomery doesn't get in there because of Gibbs. So it's almost a two-headed monster now for Detroit. And St. Brown and Gibbs. I got to believe the Packers are better than that today. I really do. So I'm going to call for the outright win here on the road by Green Bay. I think their defense can have a big game. And I think they can actually, if you want a good bet to get some money to pay out people, look at Green Bay minus 9.5 or minus 10.5 on an all line. You're like, there's no way Green Bay wins by double digits. Really? You would doubt that?
Detroit has been known to have clunkers at home. It's not often, but on Thanksgiving when everyone expects Detroit to, do what they did, at least offensively last week, which we hope occurs.
Yeah, well,
yeah, we watched it last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we saw them lose to Carolina. We saw them lose to the Browns. Talking about Green Bay, we saw Detroit lose to the Giants. Right? Anything could go wrong here for either of these teams offensively. Green Bay minus 9.5 is plus 520, plus 750 for minus 12.5. Those are some interesting numbers, guys. If you want to try to find two things as far as blowouts today, maybe the Packers aren't the worst thing in the world. The best thing about Thanksgiving football is we can thick skin and fire again all day long
Right.
until we get something that we like. So maybe not the worst thing to start here. And maybe even in the first half would be a decent way to look at the Packers. Over 10.5 points in the first half, I could see that for Green Bay. Because if they do get a lead, they'll slow it down with the running game in the second half. So considering I like the under, I do like over 10.5 first half points by Green Bay as well. Other than that, I want to say Gibbs receiving yards, but it's so many at this point, and you know that they're going to be focused on him. That's the one thing they need to be preaching. Let's not let Gibbs beat us today. All right, anyone else can try to beat us. We can't let Gibbs beat us. You want to try to let Jameson Williams beat you? But by all means, let's see if Goff has time to drop back and try to throw him the ball. So for me, boys, this is an under game. I like Green Bay as the better play to win this game outright. And I would look at some alt line numbers for Green Bay. I'll go over some props in a minute for myself as well. But your first thoughts on this game, Dave?
Yeah, Steve. I mean, I totally understand it. The weak point for Detroit right now seems to be that offensive line. You keep watching them get beat up, and Goff is under heavy duress, and so that's not what you like to see. So that's a weak point there. The defensive line for Green Bay could certainly make that happen today. So I do like that angle, but we know Detroit is at home. And that's where they're usually the best, and they need to win a game to get a little confidence boost going there and to keep pace in the standings here. So it's going to be important for them at home, and I think they kind of understand that. I think we're just going to have a really good Thanksgiving divisional game here. So with that being said, Steve, I do like your angles. I think you covered that pretty well. My main focus of this is going to be the two running backs. Now, they're going to be parlayed, of course, with the other games to try and get a touchdown scoring parlay home. But I'm going to go Gibbs and Jacobs in a kind of obvious manner, pair those two, and then we go to the next game and pair two more to get a profit boost going on for that. So, Steve, give me Gibbs and Jacobs. I think the running backs are the focus today.
Yeah, so it does appear that we'll have Jacobs. Is that correct, Anthony?
He's playing.
It'll be good to go.
He's playing, and by the way, Brock Wright's not playing. He has been ruled out. That explains why I apparently decided to play Smelly Dwelly at 2:30 at night last night.
I kind of like Jared Goff for an interception.
Yeah, absolutely.
Considering his lack of targets. Anthony, what do you like in this game? How do you see this playing out here?
Both teams have to assume that Chicago is going to lose to Philly tomorrow, which means the NFC North is up for grabs today. I mean, this is arguably the biggest game of both of their teams, because I know I sound obvious, but if either team loses, they're in a bad spot. But if they win, they could take control of the North, because I believe they both play Chicago again. And I think both teams feel like they're better than Chicago. And just judging by them going against Philly, and that spread being at -7. I think I think it will be closer than people think. I do fear about the under, but this is a show about props, and our hope is that we hit the over. So I was looking at not last year's, but 2 years ago, these teams played each other, and A.J. Dillon was still on the team. But and he was the leading rusher at 43 yards. But do you want to know who was the second leading rusher?
Let me see here. Jordan Love.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll answer for you. Jordan Love, 3 carries, 39 yards. Now, he obviously had a big scamper. It was a broken play. But there is a way where Jordan Love can get at least 25 yards rushing, and that number is very, very appetizing.
I found a cool little site yesterday. I think bettingpros.com. They have everyone's prop on how they've been doing all season, and they kind of give you a graph of what they've done. So it's kind of real easy to read. In fact, let me bookmark this again real quick. Let's see. I'll just call this prop stats. And let's see. Jordan Love now has gone over 10 yards now 7 times this season. How about that for his rushing attempts? And he's at 10.5 today. Now they project him at 8 or 9 yards. But I think it's all there for him as well, especially injuries on the defense. Once you see some guys running around, chasing receivers, missed assignments. Oh, now wait, look at all this big open space. I got to try to run. I think the Jordan Love over 10.5 yards is a great bet today for him. The Jared Goff to throw an interception is even money plus 100.
Oh, how about that?
Just so you know that. Go ahead, Anthony.
Oh, even Jameis Winston rushed for 13 yards last week against the Lions.
Right.
And he's gotten older. He doesn't rush as much, although he caught that crazy touchdown last week, which is, I still watch that left and right. But the other thing that I'm looking at, Jaden Reed played for them. He's obviously still on the IR. They will not be. I think he's activated. He's just not playing today. But Christian Watson, 5 catches, 94 yards. I don't know where the bet is of yards, or not yards, but longest catch. But if you can find something for Christian Watson to get a catch over 30 yards or 40 yards, I don't know where that is. I'm not looking for it. I'll just see my hands are a little tied
Christian
right now,
Watson for a 30-yard catch is plus 125.
I'm not saying that's free money, but where do we see Christian Watson run the curl flat route for a 7-yard gain, 5 times? Love's going to be bombing it to him. If you can find it for 40, or if you can play your own way or whatever it's called.
Right. Well, receiving yards, you blow him through the roof. And he's plus 340 to lead the game in receiving yards. And then for 100 yards, he's 4-1. 125 yards, 9-1.
I presume Amon-Ra is probably the front runner. Is Dobbs better odds than Watson or not?
Oh, no. Dobbs for the most receiving yards today is at plus 750.
Yikes.
Wicks is interesting at 20-1.
What about Gibbs?
Gibbs is always a threat. 11-1 for Gibbs.
Well,
he's gonna get half the share. He's gonna get more than half the share because they're gonna throw it to Gibbs before they will St. Brown at the end of the day. I'm convinced of that. So Gibbs at 11-1 is a great price, probably. You can parlay Jordan Love for 25 rushing yards and Gibbs to lead the game in receiving yards and get 55-1 odds.
That's not bad.
So that's an interesting way to do things. And that's better than honestly trying to take Gibbs. So Gibbs on his receiving alternate number, if we take a look at that, he's 11-1 to lead. He's only, for 70 yards or more, he's only plus 440. So we have to go to the your way to kind of crank him up more than that. But he can lead this game with 70 yards, That's what I'm trying to say.
Right.
He could have more yards than everybody else and have 70, 75 yards. So I think that's actually worth a decent shot, Antonio. Although the Wicks at 20-1 is attractive too. Just because he could be the lost man that they're not accounting for. And there you go. There's Wicks, 2 long runs for him. Next thing you know, he has 125 yards. So I'm going to look at some of that stuff. I'm going to look at Wicks' alternate number over and take a shot. That'll be fun. I think I like the Jordan Love 25 yards at plus 410. I think we can put that into some sort of a round robin. Other low hangers today for receivers. There's Tesla, 17.5. Wicks is only at 27.5. Anthony Fursker is at 9.5. Montgomery's at 11.5. Luke Musgrave, 13.5. That sounds awful low to me. For a guy who very well could have a big, big day. Just think, he's basically, he's, to me, Tucker Kraft light at worst. He might even be closer. He just doesn't get the opportunities and talent to Tucker Kraft that we realize. But 30 yards for Musgrave today is plus 340. 40 yards is plus 680. I think you got to put him on some sort of a round robin ticket of randomness and try to build it through these 4 games. So give me Musgrave receive yards. Give me Jordan Love receive yards. Give me Wicks for his yards. I like the angle on Christian Watson. Where there's fuel, there's fire, and all you experts seem to love him today. So I think we'll just have to go that route with him as well. But for me, boys, it's the Packers to win this, and we barely don't get to the over. How about that?
I agree.
Anything else for you, Anthony?
Let's move on to Dallas when we're all about to take a nap.
Oh, not so fast. We must come up with a 2-touchdown madness ticket. And we will throw in for this. Do we take a short shot and a long shot, or one guy from each team? Since there's only 4 games to deal with, I guess we try to take a guy from each team. So I'll pick first. Give me Dontavian Wicks at 33-1. And Dave, I'll give you the luxury. Give me a lion here.
All right, let's take
any lion you want.
Let's go with Williams.
Hey, Dontavian Wicks and Jameson Williams parlay just by themselves. $10 wins you $3,100 for 2 touchdowns each.
I was thinking Tesla, but I just had to pull back from that.
If you want to throw him in a random anytime touchdown score, with a bunch of other losers, that's where you add Tesla.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
There you go. Oh, boys, I wanted to hit on this too. First touchdown score. Got to build a ticket for that. Anthony, I'll let you pick this first touchdown score.
I'm going to annoy everyone listening, and including you two. You know who I think is going to score first today?
Who's that?
David Montgomery.
All right.
That's the thorn around all of us, and I'm putting my money where my mouth is at plus 950 to score first.
All right, I like it.
Yeah.
First touchdown score, David Montgomery.
Why not?
We'll run all these numbers by you here at the end, just so you know what we come up with. So Montgomery, it is for the first touchdown scorer. And again, that's something you guys can round robin out there today. Take them straight because you'll get a nice payout. But, throw 50 cents on the round robin legs because these guys are going to pay off really, really good. In fact, we had that Thanksgiving, I think 3 or 4 years ago, where that guy had all the tight ends, right? Round robin or parlayed together is what it was for the first touchdown. So it can happen. Next game, Kansas City and Dallas, -3.5 and 52.5. You said it, Anthony. Let's move on to Dallas and try to make some money. If there's a game that's going to go over, I believe that it is this one because Patrick Mahomes will find all kinds of gaps in the Dallas defense, and Dak Prescott simply has been on fire himself. Not necessarily an MVP, but people have kind of put him in that conversation a little bit, at least, kind of give him the side eye and maybe a chance to get there at the end. Dallas is fighting for their playoff lives basically at this point. This is almost a de facto playoff game with the Chiefs kind of right on the fringe of the playoffs themselves. So a very important game for both of these teams, as equal as importance as the game before, in which, like Anthony said, where the NFC North is up for grabs today. And there's two ways to really look at this. And Bill Grandy went the way of it's Patrick Mahomes. And how many times have I told myself this the last couple of years? It's Patrick Mahomes. They have all the weapons. They'll get right. They'll blow this team out. They'll win by 1 million points. Only for them to crap the bed and look like they're barely getting things done. And, winning by 2 points, 3 points in ugly games, losing to the Raiders, stuff like that. So, Kansas City and Dallas. Can this game really be a super duper shootout? Everyone sitting around the TV wants it to be. Everyone's probably going to bet it like that. That's why that alternate under angle becomes so important here. It's because everyone in the world is going to be on the over in this football game when it happens later today. So again, don't get caught with your pants down. Do maybe all 4 unders on that one ticket at 10-1, and then move the points around a little bit to get that 50-1 ticket. If you move everything by less than a touchdown and try to hit a jackpot, I think you got to 52.5 is a lot of points. Could they get there by halftime? Probably. If they wanted to, I guess they could. But we haven't seen it from Kansas City. And we've seen Dallas, be able to score on the bad teams. And when it gets to be the good teams, things get a little tougher for them. Eagles and Cowboys we thought would go over last week. What was that? 45 points. So I think the same type of deal here today. I think the mojo is such right now with the Chiefs. And we thought that they were going to go on some sort of a super run. They kind of started to, and then they fell on their face in Buffalo and really haven't looked the same since. Even winning against the Colts. It seems like that's a game the Colts probably should have won if they knew how to run the ball at the end of the game and control the clock and keep Mahomes off the field. Again, you think that's the recipe for Dallas today is to use Javonte Williams, keep Patrick Mahomes on the sidelines. But I think the offensive lows for the Chiefs are as such, and Dallas has been really good on offense, that they should try to just run them out of the stadium. Dallas tries to score early and often and have the Chiefs just try to keep and play catch up. It's going to be interesting how this game turns out today. I think Dallas can hang in there and win this game. I think they can win this game. I don't know if they can win by an all line like the Packers can, because, again, the Chiefs keep everything close. But it's not going to shock me that Dallas would win this game because the Chiefs have developed their own ineptitude scale, to be honest. They shoot themselves in the foot. They don't make things easy on themselves when trying to win these games. Not that Dallas does.
Right.
But Dallas, the more chaotic of teams who knows how to live and die by those grassroots, I'll just take a chance at that stadium today. It'll be interesting to see how much red is in the stands as well, as that is a travelable trip for the Chief fans. I want this to be a fun game. Man, I'm not going to be shocked if this ends up barely under as well. I'll bite the bullets. Give me Dallas in the upset here because the Chiefs haven't played the part of looking like a team who should be favored by anybody by 3 or 4 points on the road here. Pickens has been the man. George Pickens for a touchdown today is at plus 145. I'll go ahead and make sure he's on a ticket. Del Grande loves Rashee Rice. I heard a great argument for Kareem Hunt under his rushing prop, which is at 35.5. He's had 0 explosive runs over 10 yards, really, the whole season. Everything's been a couple yards. And you know that the Chiefs are going to try to pass the ball. That's all they do. It's going to be up to Worthy and Rice. It really, really is. And you do have Pacheco back today as well. Maybe able to keep that number for Kareem Hunt down. So an interesting under angle. If you're looking for a big-time negative ticket with like a golf interception, throw the Kareem Hunt under 35.5 yards on that negative Nancy ticket as well. Barely under, boys, and the Cowboys squeak it out 27-20. Anthony, I'll go to you first. What do you like?
I'm thinking. I apologize. I'm doing a couple things at once right now. Now, this is must-win situation for both teams. Dallas needs to win out, and Kansas City kind of needs to win out as well. You saw what Dallas did against Philly last week. I wouldn't be surprised if the same exact thing happens, but in the opposite way, and the Chiefs are going to annoy us like they did last week. I wouldn't be surprised if Dallas came out just punching Pickens, Javonte, Ferguson, Lamb, and then Mahomes slowly, methodically makes his comeback. It's going to be a tight game.
Dallas first half might be the better play than Dallas.
Yeah, now that, yep.
Now, of course, it could go the other way, but, I'm going to stick by this. I think Dallas comes out and just punches them in the mouth. They're going to use that momentum that they had against Philly, go into Thanksgiving. Let's get a couple guys to jump in that Salvation Army tank, right?
Yep.
Maybe a 14-0 early lead. And then, of course, the calm before the storm. Here comes Patrick Mahomes. And we're going to hear all about it with Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. Can't wait. Jim, can't wait to hear that all damn day. Hopefully you have a sleep by then. They're going to make their comeback. They're going to squeak their way through. They're going to find ways to score. They better use Rice because I'm going to take him again. Steve, you mocked me a little bit last week by taking Rice to get 9 catches. I'm going to just dumb it down. I'm going to go with 8 catches again for Rashee Rice. I don't know what the number is. I don't really have my phone in front of me, but I'm going with Rice again for 8 catches. It's crazy that Pickens has been the number 1 receiver for Dallas when CeeDee Lamb is clearly their alpha. But, hey, whatever works, right? When I played my 100 yards and a score, obviously my big reach with Jameson Williams, fingers crossed, it's either 0 or 100. I'm going to throw Lamb in there as well. But Jake Ferguson's one of my favorite guys to get in the end zone today. I'm a little concerned about Javonte Williams. I feel like he's slowing down. And I think this is all about Dak and his passing game. So give me Ferguson to score. Give me Lamb with the alternate yards. Give me Rice with the alternate catches. And if I'm going to throw something random in there, I wouldn't be surprised if Xavier Worthy gets in the end zone as well. He's a gadget guy. What is Worthy's odds?
Plus 220 for him. Jake Ferguson is at plus 230. On the passing props, Dak Prescott 263.5, Mahomes 274.5 for their passing touchdowns. Though Randy thinks they can both get 3. Mahomes just plus 154 for 3. Dak just plus 270. So they're expecting that the ball to come through the air today. And for receptions for Rice, let me just get that real quick.
Yeah, what's 8?
8 receptions for Rashee Rice today is at plus 148.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a low. That's low.
Well, here's the thing. He would have had 12 catches if his feet weren't out of bounds on 4 of them. So what is it for 10? I'm getting greedy.
Plus
but
410.
I'm curious.
Plus 410 for 10.
If this is the over game that we all hope it will be, it's going to be nothing but Rice. Because guess what? Dallas's defense, not as good as Indy's. Plus, as crazy as this sounds, Isaiah Pacheco's back. And as a fantasy owner of him, unfortunately, he stinks. And guess what? Kareem Hunt kind of stinks too. He's just slowly.
He's just a goal line back.
Yeah, that's exactly what he is.
He's the goal line back. So if you want to throw him in a random touchdown bet, like if you want to do like not easy, but if you want to throw Gibbs and Josh Jacobs, throw Kareem Hunt in there.
Right. Right.
But when hold on, girlfriend's yelling at the dog. I have to hide myself real quick. Look, even though Pacheco's in there, I feel like their running game gets worse. Mahomes will be throwing it.
God, fucking.
Well, Mahomes might run himself too. I was looking at 40 yards.
Well, I'm actually making a little thing where Love gets 25 and Mahomes gets 40. So, Dave, we're going to continue to talk about this once we get to that Bengal game.
Oh yeah, because yes we are, because I got Lamar in there as a three-man parlay.
What else do you like, Dave?
Steve, I like this to be a tight game. I'm really hoping this is the better game of the day, and that Dallas loses. Obviously, we'll just throw that out there, taking a little shot at the Dallas fans. But no, I think we have a good game here. I think the Cowboys do cover, but the Chiefs, in that annoying fashion that they like to do, wins the game. Maybe we're looking at a walk-off field goal, or Dallas is, down and can't score on the last drive. The defense holds, something of that nature. So let's take Dallas to cover, but Kansas City win in a really tight game. And correct me if I'm wrong. This seems very obvious, but we haven't talked about, and nobody's mentioned, Travis Kelce in there. You're looking at Rashee Rice, and all these other guys, but who's the safety blanket? It's going to be Kelce, right? I mean, he's 950 or plus 900 for 2 touchdowns. I could see that. Inside the red zone, he gets that little 10, 15-yard pass there. He's plus 130 for any time, and that's definitely something that you can add into a parlay as well. So I would definitely take a look at Kelce. Again, these two teams have to have it. So where is Mahomes going to be looking? At the guys he's going to trust the most. And who is that? That's Travis Kelce. So play him for 1. Give him consideration for 2. That's what I like here. Give me Kelce. Give me Dallas to cover. But Kansas City wins.
All right, boys. You guys are looking at it all from the wrong angle here. Look at this bet. $10 to win you $2,100. You ready for this? 5 things need to happen. Rashee Rice, 10 yards rushing. Xavier Worthy, 10 yards rushing. Kevontae Turpin, 10 yards rushing. Ryan Flonase, 10 yards receiving. Juju Smith-Schuster, 10 yards receiving.
That is interesting.
$10 wins 2,100 and 321. In fact, while we're at it, let's just go back to this Green Bay game because we can refire if needed. And we're going to go ahead and pop the opener in on this one for our man, Jordan Love, over 10.5 yards rushing, which now makes this. In fact, you could do Jordan Love at a little bit of an alternate number if you plan to refire this. So maybe Jordan Love for 15 yards rushing at plus 152 opens the door for the rest of those. And now $10 pays you $5,388. I would say that is investing the minimum to make the maximum. And again, that is 10 yards rushing by Rashee Rice, who gets carries.
Right.
10 yards rushing by Worthy, who gets carries. 10 yards rushing by Turpin, he gets a carry or two. Ryan Flournoy, who's now filled in nicely as Dallas's third receiver, I think. 10 yards receiving for him. And Juju Smith-Schuster, 10 yards receiving for him. So there's an interesting, fun little ticket, boys, that I suggest everyone get a part of. Even your $2 investment, people. Once you get $1,075, you can go to the lottery store and put $2 on a lottery ticket. And I'm telling you, you're going to win this way faster than you're going to win that ticket.
Oh.
So interesting angle here. But for real in this game, I think I like Pickens for a touchdown. He's going to be my go-to guy in this game. I did play Anthony's ticket we'll talk about this. He has 3 receivers for a touchdown and 100 yards. So I went ahead and threw CeeDee Lamb on that ticket like he suggested. So I got Lamb covered. I'll take Pickens for a touchdown in this game. And then, again, I like Anthony's angle of Worthy just being ready to go as well. If I'm going to look for a long shot touchdown scorer, give me Flournoy, 7-1. How about that? He does get into the end zone, and he is a target for Dak Prescott. I like to receive yards as well for Ferguson. He's pretty light at 36.5. I think that, again, the Juju at 11.5 now. Look, we're moving lines like crazy, people. Juju's line just went up. And Flournoy, just a couple of low hangers are worth a shot. So we'll see if we get the fireworks, fellas. If we do, go ahead.
Last one before we move on to the next game. I meant what I said about Dallas punching Kansas City in the mouth at first. If you're looking at a first touchdown score, Dave, you brought it up last week. It didn't hit, but he was close. Juju's at 35-1.
Yeah, he was close, wasn't he?
All right, so let's throw Juju first touchdown scorer. He's in there with David Montgomery. You just said it. Dave, give me a Cowboy or a Chief.
For 2, right?
Yep.
Here's one because I have him in a ticket. And, Oklahoma boy, CeeDee Lamb for 2 touchdowns today.
All right, that's a semi-ringer type of maneuver. And I will go ahead and keep that ringer motif going here. And we'll put Rashee Rice in there at 5-1. And let me go back to the last games. I'm building some tickets here. In fact, we'll come up with all the numbers at the end. We'll have a minute to plug these in. So Lamb and Rice for 2. All right, Bengals and Ravens now -7, 51.5. The Ravens don't give me comfort in saying that I think they'll win by a score or 2, but I think they covered a spread, and this is probably an ugly game. I like the under in this one the most. I think that's a better play on the board besides the spreads or the over-under. Of all the unders that we are going to try to go with today, I think I like this one the best. That being said, go ahead and give me Derrick Henry for 2 touchdowns in this game. That'll be my main play. I'll go with the Isaiah Likely receive yards as well. Though Grandy likes it, but I've been playing it every week. He's just at 27.5, now up from 23.5. So we are moving lines this morning, and Likely is paying a decent price at 40-1 at plus 186. I do have Likely receive yards on my no sweat ticket this morning. So I went ahead and did that. I went ahead on my no sweater. I did Isaiah Likely 40 yards, Ryan Flournoy 20 yards, and the Packers minus 9.5. And Derrick Henry for a touchdown. So I believe that's what my no sweat is. But I'll take the Likely 40 yards receiving or more. And too much rust for Joe Burrow. No T. Higgins. Too many issues for the Bengals lately. Baltimore skates by 27-10. That sounds like a good final to me. Maybe it's 27-17, something like that. What do you like, Dave?
I like Baltimore in this game as well. I want to see it from Burrow first. I want to see how he's looking, if he's close to 100%, how he's feeling. Like I said, he's on my IR in fantasy, and I would love to get him back at just the right time. But I've got to see it because he's missed so much time. So maybe I just wait a game to see what he can produce against the Baltimore defense. I do like Baltimore to cover, maybe even 9.5 in a game that comes screeching, maybe right to the number of 51.5. No T. Higgins today, so that's also a concern. That makes me like Baltimore a lot more. Steve, I had Derrick Henry for 2 as well in a 3-man ticket. I like Mark Andrews a lot tonight too. I would definitely consider him for 2. It's plus 750. I haven't played it. Definitely for 1 at plus 105. I might even get on board with his receiving numbers. But other than that, Steve, the Ravens, right? Everybody kind of thought they were dead. I didn't. I thought that they, once they got Lamar back, I think me and Ant talked about it, that they were going to make a push, and look what they're doing. They're certainly doing that. And I do believe Pittsburgh has a tough matchup this week. So Baltimore could really start to kind of take control of this division if they can get past Cincinnati tonight. And I like them to do that. So give me Baltimore to cover. Give me Henry for 2, and sprinkle in Mark Andrews in any capacity that you would like to use him.
A good angle, if this is somewhat of one-sided affair as well, you'll know that Henry will go to the bench in the second half, in which Keaton Mitchell, with his alternate rushing number, should go over, I would think. 40 yards for Keaton Mitchell is at plus 310, plus 550 for 50 yards or more. If you're expecting the one-sided affair, this is a number you could play live too. Come second quarter, if it looks kind of ugly on the part of Baltimore, start firing. Now, the Keaton Mitchell numbers will probably be adjusted because the books are smart, but you want to be able to fire on that. And if you want to take a risk now and just take a shot at it, I won't argue it anyway. Injuries can always play a factor in this as well, where he gets more opportunities than you think. So just kind of keep that in mind. He wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to play with Musgrave receiving yards, something like that. The Flournoy receiving yards. Jordan Love rushing yards, right?
Yep.
If you want to try to hit some home runs today on some guys, then, the rushing yards for Derrick Henry for 150 or more. Let's see. Where you at, Mr. Henry? Or even 125 or more. Plus 310 for 125, 7-1 for 150 or more. So is the worst thing in the world to have like a Rashee Rice for 150 yards, Derrick Henry for 150 yards? No, it's not. if you want to play the alpha dog route. Maybe even with like a Christian Watson, 100 yards, Derrick Henry, 150, Rashee Rice or CeeDee Lamb for 150, or even both. You know,
Right.
you're going to
right.
get a good payout with that.
Hey, boys, sorry to cut you off. I'm going to have to drop. Let me start diving into this bird. I'm going to tell you my favorite play of this game. Isavos.
Isavos, okay.
Yeah. No T. Higgins, no problem. Joe Burrow, let's roll. Let's see if Burrow still has it. Let's see if he can actually kick all the rust off. But look, Isavos got 60 yards against New England. And if this over does stay true, you're looking at a nice plus 360 for 60 yards.
And the Bengals are decided the sports book. So you're aligning yourself well if you like the Bengals in that regard. Any best play for the game tomorrow, Ant? And we'll let you go.
Probably just Eagles to win. Unfortunately, the Bears proved that they're actually a pretty good team. Although I don't want to admit it, but we'll see what happens with Philly. We'll see if they have a nice little rebound after that terrible second half performance against Dallas. Devonta Smith is still up in the air, so monitor that. But my favorite guy to get in the end zone is Dallas Goedert. Pat Freiermuth did it. Why can't Goddard? Jalen Hurts already got his 2 scores. I can't bet Barkley anymore. If he scores twice tomorrow and he gets 150 rushing yards, hit it. If you want, I will. I'm not that upset if you take Barkley's receiving yards like we took. What was it, Steve? What, 44?
Yeah,
46, something like that?
Yeah. Alternate number. Yep.
Well, you saw what Kenneth Gainwell did against Chicago last week with Pittsburgh. So I'm not I wouldn't be that upset about you taking Barkley on that. But give me Dallas Goedert to score. For Chicago, who knows? Dave's Monangai. I don't know.
You know what?
There we go. Monangai.
It's funny. I just put both of those guys in for the 2 touchdown scores. And we'll use Goddard for the first touchdown score at 8-1 as well. How about that? All right, Antonio. Happy Thanksgiving.
I appreciate it, boys.
Happy Thanksgiving, sir.
Later.
All right, he's gone. Dave, your best bet for Chicago, Philly?
I like Chicago to cover, I think, actually, Steve. I haven't dived into this game a whole lot. I'm actually really looking forward to tomorrow. We're going to work a half day. Then we're going to watch a little of this football game. Then we have a Georgia football game at 3:30. And then we have Capitals hockey at 5. So what a great, great sports day tomorrow is going to be on top of all the action we have today. So just a great 2 days of sports.
Yeah, just all weekend. Really.
All weekend, really,
stops.
Yeah.
We've got college basketball on at all hours of the day.
Oh, yeah, we got college basketball, which I am starting to pay a little bit more attention to. We have college football, Oklahoma versus LSU. Win and you're in scenario for them. Caps play at 1 o'clock, Steve. Maybe we find a TV for them in the sports lounge on Sunday. But give me the Bears to cover, and I'll look more into this this evening and tomorrow.
All right. Let's see here. For me, in this game with the Bears and the Eagles, I think the under is just the best play with the weather issues. I do like the Goddard angle. So, again, we'll throw him on the first touchdown. And then I'm kind of mundane after that. I mean, I do like what Anthony said, the Barkley receive yards. That's been an auto play with me. So I'm going to have to keep going with that. All right. So if I have a round robin stretching into tomorrow, then it makes sense to put in Barkley as a receive yard guy on his alternate total to get there. Let's see. We'll throw Monangai and Goddard in the 2 touchdown madness. Let's come back to this Bengals-Ravens game. First touchdown, I have not picked one yet. let's go with, I mean, how do you not go with Derrick Henry, to be honest?
Yeah, I was going to say him or Mark Andrews.
So we have Juju Smith-Schuster, James Montgomery, Dallas Goedert, and Derrick Henry. So we can round robin parlay those guys. And then for 2 touchdowns, we got Dallas Goedert, Kyle Monangai, CeeDee Lamb, Rashee Rice. We got Dontavian Wicks. And we have Jameson Williams. Now we need one from Baltimore and Cincinnati. All right, Dave, go ahead and give me somebody.
All right, for 2?
Yeah.
All right, let's go with let's see here. For 2, let's go with let's go long shot. How about Rashad Bateman?
All right. I like that. Rashad Bateman at 22-1. And I need to come up with a Bengal. Give me Mike Gesicki at 35-1.
Ah, love it. Love it.
So that's 32 different 3-game parlays. Let's see here. If we did 50 cents a leg, then that comes out to about $1,000 if we get any of the 3.
All right.
And then if we do 50 cents on the 4s, then we're looking at about $11,000 on any of the 4s, any combination of the 4. Now, you can only hit one from each game is the trick here. So it's one or the other.
Right.
We can't have Wicks and Jameson Williams both in the same one. Maybe this is worth dumbing down a little bit. This would be a $24 bet if we play it for 50 cents a leg. But your grand total, let's just figure you would hit 4, right? Because that's going to be the right number. And then you would get, let's see, 16,000, 20,000 bucks, basically, if we can get one of these guys from each game to stick.
Nice.
All right, let's cue up our most popular sounder in sports, the 2 touchdown sounder. I think we just gave you a bunch of guys anyway. We'll get the 1 or 2 best bets. I got a couple ankles for you.
Johnny.
4 weeks. 20 papers, that's $2 plus tip.
Gee, Johnny, I don't have a dime. Sorry.
Didn't ask for a dime. $2.
Yeah, give me 2.5 and a Ric Flair.
It's a jungle out there. You got to look out for number 1, but don't step at number 2.
Utah, give me 2.
And Jimmy 2 times, who got that nickname because he said everything twice, like.
I'm going to go get the papers.
All right, our Friday and Thursday 2 touchdown madness ticket. All these guys mixed and matched. CeeDee Lamb, Rashee Rice, Dallas Goedert, Kyle Monangai, Dontavian Wicks, Jameson Williams, Rashad Bateman, Mike Gesicki. I'll also do one with just Gibbs and Henry together. I parlayed those 2 guys for 2 touchdowns. And then let's add in George Pickens and Rashee Rice to that mix. And then I'll throw in Jalen Hurts to get 2 as well. Dave, what do you got?
All right, Steve, I'm going to try and keep this somewhat simple here. Ticket I really like. This is a minimum for the maximum type deal here for me. So it's Thanksgiving, right? What do we think about on Thanksgiving? We like to feast. We're eating all the foods, right? These guys are no stranger to feasting, Steve. We have Jahmyr Gibbs for 2. We have CeeDee Lamb for 2. And then we have Derrick Henry for 2. It's just a 3-man parlay today until we get to Sunday. Then we'll add a 4th man because we usually do 4. I went with 3 today, Steve, and for $5, you're looking at almost $900. So I'm not too mad at those 3 guys to score twice today.
All right, what are your best bets?
All right, best bets. We're gonna look here. at a anytime touchdown ticket, we have Derrick Henry, of course, Gibbs and Jacobs in a same game. Then we have Javonte Williams and Kareem Hunt in a same game. And then, Steve, I'll give you one more. We can't get out of here without playing a quarterback rushing ticket. We have Jordan Love for 25. And then we climb up Patrick Mahomes for 40. And then we're going to round it off with Lamar Jackson for 40 tonight.
All right. I'm going to take, let's see here. I'm going to take Jordan Love over 10.5 rushing yards. I'm going to take Juju and Flournoy over their low receiving yards, 11.5 and 8.5 respectively. I'm going to take Isaiah Likely over his receiving yards. It's 23.5. I'm going to play with all numbers here. I'm going to take Musgrave and Wicks over their receiving yards. Jordan Love, again, with his rush. I'm going to take Jared Goff for an interception. I'm going to take the Packers on the alt line. I'll take the under in the Ravens and Bengals game. And I'm going to blanket all 4 unders just as an insurance policy to see if we go for the old put yourself on the side of the sports book and root for all 4 unders to hit. I'm going to make up my missing week of my $1,000 bet to have your Big Steve lock of the week. That's 7-3, actually 8-3 after last week with the Rams winning. So we're back to back-to-back winning weeks there. We are 8-3 through 11 weeks. We're week 13, right? So I'm going to make up for the missing week last week, and then I'll pick one on Sunday, and that'll give us an even 13 picks through 13 weeks. So your bonus $1,000 bet to win $8,000. Let's see here, Dave. It's between 2 of them. It's the Packers +3 or under in this game tonight with the Bengals and the Ravens. Go ahead and give me for my Big Steve lock of the week. There's no one in the world who's going to be happy trying to root overs digesting their food tonight. So give me the under 51.5 as my lock of the day. Ravens and the Bengals under 51.5 points total. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up. Thank you to Dave Dolgrande. The history of fantasy football. Replay that when you're bored. That took the first hour of our program today. We got a bunch of good picks. We'll be back on Sunday morning, hopefully with very deep, rich pockets. Nephew Dave, happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Good luck to all you guys out there. Hopefully you'll hit some winning tickets and have a wonderful day wherever you are.